Time for another episode of Summoning Insight with your two favorite, most toxic esports personalities, myself, MonteCristo, and Thorin, of course. And the reason I bring this up is because there's been a lot of discussion about toxicity recently, what it means or actually doesn't mean anymore, because I guess toxicity means having analytic takes or tweeting your opinion in mild ways, perhaps having guests on shows and then asking them questions that some might view as somewhat controversial, but not going too hard. And I think that's the problem, Thorin, is that toxicity as a concept has lost its entire meaning, running the gamut from mild criticism to outright bigotry. And who knows, when you say that word, where anyone lands on that spectrum. And saying that competitive people are toxic just means that maybe they really want to win and get angry when they don't win, which is a normal athlete take. So, what's funny is I asked on Twitter, and this is by no means a complete universe of information, but I suspected that video game companies did not use the term toxic prior to the arrival of Riot Lite in about 2012.
I never saw that word. They might say you flame. In fact, flame used to be the word back then, but it almost had like an element to it where it's like, everyone does it, isn't it?
And flaming was more about being frustrated and taking out your frustration in a competitive sense in the game.
Spoiler, it is toxicity. That just is what they were always claiming. The joke is this. Everyone nowadays does that thing where they go, oh, I've made this observation about society. And then what they don't know is like everything old is new again. Like there's nothing new under the sun. So if people don't know, when people politically go, the word fascism's just lost all meaning. Like George Orwell literally wrote an essay saying that in like the 1940s, exactly this premise that like eventually fascism would just come to mean everything I don't like, which guess what? Obviously pretty prophetic comment, right? So in the same way that like people will say stuff like, no joke, if you say I believe in free speech, they go, what a fascist take. It's like, all right, it just has lost all meaning. As we say, basically, well, I describe it this way. It's not a real concept. They're not making a diagnosis of a real condition that they've defined that exists in terms of behavior, because as you say, it's so wide it could encompass anything. And it's not something either that's like you've caught something like Riot almost tried to make it seem like you're in a toxic condition. We have to fucking make you better, man. Like what it is really, it's just a way of labeling your enemies. What you do is you say, this person is toxic. We all agree toxicity is bad. You've experienced toxicity. Remember when that guy, when you were playing Udyr and he told you to come gank his lane, it's your fault he died. He's toxic, therefore connecting your brain, everything they're doing, it's them. Look, that's the guy who was getting you when you were on Udyr, and then they're like, right, where do I get the pitchfork and which way do I go? Like, there's no logic involved. It's mob. It's like it's emotional mob direction basically. There's nothing to do with really what anyone's like, is it? I do appreciate, though, by the way, that they say, as if anyone could ever for a moment come to respect the Western League of Legends audience. They, because they started to get pretty legit money. I noticed a lot of them, crediting like, oh, Emily's the best thing on the broadcast. Oh, they're starting to get the takes finally. Okay. Oh, maybe I don't like these random people who are added who I've never seen have any experience and they don't seem to anything. Oh, fucking hell, they're almost there, money. They're within touching distance of it. And then all of a sudden, they turn around and go, you know what, though? I think I'd rather just listen to that brainless AD carry from season 2. And it's like, that saying, like, from God's lips to our ears. No, it's from fucking Doublelift's lips to our ears. Like, this motherfucker may as well be the prophet. Like, what is this shit? Everything he says is just right. It's just fucking genius. Like, he could actually, no joke, just go in and just go, you know what? I've always thought Western teams don't have good macro. Thread on the top of the page. Why Western teams have the bad macro? I always thought they're bad. The same motherfuckers who go, how can you tell if an LPL game's a Clout Fiesta or an LCS game? The same ones would be like, I agree with Doublelift. The macro in LCS shit. Like, it's such a gormless scene, and it made it so gormless.
I see. The thing about Doublelift is that, in my opinion, he was at his best when he actually had people to bounce his takes off of. That's why, like, the season 3 Worlds desk with like me and him and Crepo was so good, because we could call him out on the crap, and sometimes he does have good takes, right? But in a vacuum, there's no one to challenge him, and I think it ends up being super weird. Like, in my opinion, he's best in a dialogue with other people. Because
they have that weird thing on those core streams they do. By the way, all the people on the core stream have have their own banger personality. Like obviously Meteos is like super fucking acerbic and like everything he says is clearly like a negative comment, but he makes it seem just like a funny throwaway. Sneaky's whole thing is just sort of like just to put a zinger in every now and then just to say something weird, right? So they've all got great personalities that work. But the problem is there is the vibe where it's like Doublelift's the cool kid at school with a car, so we'd all better just
How did we get here? How is he the cool one?
You know, and then everyone's just around him going like, yeah, man, fuck those guys. They don't even know you, man. Or you know, like it's just people kissing his ass all the time. And he's like, give me a break, mate. Give me a break. I also love the way in that clip, by the way. I almost laughed myself to sleep because I watched a bit afterwards. He explains that like he never knew like, you know, what it was like to actually have like toxic environment and stuff because he was in CLG and then no joke, with no sense of irony whatsoever, no crack in his character. He goes, and then I joined TSM and got introduced to other people. Like, wait a minute, holy shit, you think TSM was the non-toxic environment? Holy fuck, that is the definition of out of the frying pan into the fire. What are you talking about? By the way, you are aware they shit canned your ass a few years later. You literally again started doing shit where you're throwing in fucking jerseys into literal trash cans, went to another team, shit talked them for years, and then came back to date the fucking president. Like, mate. What I love about Doublelift is this though, he is beyond parody. He is like, you couldn't make like, put it this way, you know, people make like, you know, fucking Jat's ego or whatever. You couldn't make one of Doublelift, it's just the Doublelift account, and it's like, man, we are beyond parody. We are our own satirization.
You know something that I've noticed about people who were like giga nerds in high school, Thorin, is that basically they end up reliving their entire high school experience at a later date in their lives and forever. And you see this like a lot of people, right? Like, how did you end up with this frat farting culture at Riot? It's the same junk. Like these people are suddenly cool. And
these were the guys, if you don't get it, what Monty's saying, these are the guys who probably weren't in the frat. The whole point is they recreated it in their office. And like, we can do whatever we want, man. We can have beer and girls and everything. Like, yeah, that's what it was like when they made that company.
So the funny thing about Doublelift is like he went from a pro with like this crazy bull haircut, and like credit to him, you know, he's a staple, probably the best North American player at all time. So I'm not shitting on him. You know, went to the gym, got really ripped, and now he's like dating the prom queen of League of Legends. Like it's actually insane when you think about it. But it is basically a recreation of a high school experience with him styled as like the prom king jock.
Yeah, I can't lie. 14-year-old Doublelift's fucking killing the game. Tell you what, mate. If he could see you now, he'd be so proud. You were fucking nailed this, mate. For real, yeah.
Yeah, for real.
Fucking killed it. But anyway, back to the toxicity point. Basically, the point that Doublelift made there is obviously a very apt one. It's also one that's been made a million times. Just you cannot break the way fans see the world. So unfortunately, right, I get by the way, I actually try to always view these things anthropologically. So I understand why fans can't get it, right? The problem is this. It's the reason why media is able to trick everyone every day of our lives. If you show someone a little bit of information or a perspective on something, but they have nothing else, no other frame of reference, it will fill the vacuum of the space in their brain that topic contains. So they will think they know everything because they do know something, but they don't know what they don't know. Almost to quote a fucking classic Donald Rumsfeld speech there. But basically, they can't know what they don't know, right? So I always say one of the craziest effects I ever see is this. I have people from Fnatic on my shows. I have people who've left Fnatic on my shows. I do interviews with them and they seem to bizarrely answer the way I was asking them in the question. They know I follow them on Twitter. We could be DMing. They know I'm literally friends with some of the Fnatic players, but they can never, ever conceive for 1 second anyone might ever have privately off camera told me anything about Reckless that they don't know. Because here's the thing, Monty, they've watched more of his streams than I have. So actually they know more than me about Reckless than I do. I couldn't possibly know. The second the camera goes off, they go, get the fuck away from me, I'm gonna speak to you.
By the way, these same people are the ones who believe everything Reckless's on-camera personality says as a reflection of his true identity, right? Which makes sense because they also believe that about you, right? They actually are incapable of believing that there is some other pattern of behavior behind a performative personality or behind a public-facing personality.
That's what I'm getting to, because basically when he says, like, Faker is talking, by the way, if that's a fucking actual spoiler for you, like, holy shit, like... You're still the kid in high school. You're still the 14-year-old playing at being an adult. Like, you aren't even in the real world. I genuinely am shocked. Because listen, I would understand it if they'd said something mad. Like, you know, I'll give you a mad example. If they'd said like Acorn was toxic or something, or like fucking Gorilla was toxic, you know, ones that are supposed to be the nicest guy. You know what I mean? Then I'd maybe be like, oh, I wouldn't have thought him. Dude, the idea they think Faker isn't, like, it's like, first of all, that's just absurd. Like, you know nothing about fucking Asian culture. And then secondly, as he points out there, it goes without saying, like, all the top players off camera have this ego. They were going, I saw comments at the top of the Reddit thread, Monty, that were like, but he's never broken his character on stream. Like, in all the interviews, though, he seems so good. It's like, give me a break. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, I think we really need to stop using the term toxic, because I want to go back to when it was introduced.
Richard always used to say back in the day it was a nonsense term. You shouldn't even give it the power of like discussing it almost, you know.
It's so non-specific. And you'll notice that this toxicity term is never and never has been used in traditional sports with highly competitive people. You never hear about toxic behavior as a term that's used at a high level in terms of press or in terms of public discussion about certain players, because in sports it's usually spun as being highly competitive or having a very high drive. So it's almost spun positively, which I also think is kind of weird in many ways. But you have to be more specific.
Sometimes, if anything, that goes too far the other way, doesn't it? Because sometimes actually then people do get away with basically being bullies when they probably should be called,
physically assaulting their teammates. I mean, there's tons of stuff that happens in sports that's fucked up. So I'm not trying to say that.
Dude, I'll give you a mad example. Because Kobe died, obviously, right? Everyone in the universe who ever met him or talked to him has told their story now for clout on the internet, because that's the fucking generation we live in. Never keep anything for yourself. Never have a special moment with a guy you claim to have loved that you just keep for yourself and maybe your son or something when you're old, man. Nah, definitely just put it on the internet for some clicks and likes, because that's really the way what I live our lives, isn't it? But anyway, one of the stories someone told is fucking hilarious, which is when that guy Jeremy Lin was on the Lakers with Kobe. It was right when Kobe had already been injured, and it was right towards the end of his career, and the Lakers were garbage, right? And he wasn't even playing half the time because he kept getting injured, like re-injuring different parts of his body because he was so broken down. And supposedly, now if this isn't pure toxicity, what the fuck is? Right? Kobe came in when he wasn't even playing, and they'd lost a bunch of games, right? And he came in on the day of like the trade deadline or whatever to practice. And at the time, because he was always injured, he wasn't practicing with the team, and they weren't very good, so he thought, what's the point, right? So when he came into practice, Jeremy Lin and them were like, what are you doing here? And he said, no joke, and this wasn't a joke, he just looked at them and just said, I just came in to see which one of you sorry bombs are getting shipped out today. That's all he came in for. To just say that to them. Now listen, I like shit in a movie like that, but like, I don't care how good this guy was. He's probably my favorite player ever. That's toxic as fuck. Except the term is nonsense. He's just an asshole. He was just an asshole in that case.
Exactly. Why did we have to invent this new word? And like, so here's the thing about toxicity is that it implies that it's some sort of corrosive force, right?
Yes.
When being critical is not necessarily a corrosive force. In fact, being toxic in some instances can actually be a positive. And I made a video a long time ago when Riot refused to introduce the practice tool in League of Legends because they thought that it would.
Oh yes.
It would be toxic. People would tell each other. And I said it's constructive toxicity in that instead of somebody saying like, you fucking suck, they can say, you fucking suck, go to the practice tool. So there's actually good advice in there, right? So it's not
that term you've used is even what I actually used in some video. I always use the word corrosive because I want to only use that when I specifically mean someone who in the team environment destroys all the links between other people and diminishes their teammates. So by the way, Double Lift, you were one of those people. Like, I even pointed out, look, in the Link tiny violin thing, like, look, yeah, he went way too far with it. He did blame you for everything. But if you just listen to what him and your teammates were saying, they were basically saying, even if we thought you were the best player, you just fucking bombed us out when you came and like just told us we were all shit and everything was bad and you didn't believe in us. Like, that's an example of corrosion. Like, you did wear away what would have made the team strong. You can be an asshole, by the way, and channel it, obviously. Like some of these sports examples we're given, they sort of found their niche, didn't they?
And almost everybody who is a top level competitor does have what you would call toxicity, because that word no longer has any meaning, but you're never going to make it to the top level. So here's some truths, guys, about fields like sports and entertainment. You have to be fucking delusional to make it to the top. When you are nobody, you have to have a fundamental belief in yourself and a work ethic that is going to propel you to the top. And you have to be convinced that you are a professional player or a movie star before you can ever actually be one, right? Because the level of struggle and rejection that you will face, including many people not even ever able to get to the top, right, is insane. So if you don't have a giant fucking ego, then you're not going to make it. If you don't have an insane competitive drive, then you're not going to make it. And people who have giant egos and insane competitive drives tend to be mad when people around them are not living up to their abilities or expectations, which leads to oftentimes some harsh words, because these people are driven to such a degree that they get pissed off when they don't win or they're not on top. So that's just
an example.
There's a fact of reality.
It's the reason why if people haven't noticed, it's not just their play. It's the reason why I don't really vibe generally with people like Golden Glue would be a classic example. Meanwhile, even though he's short and far less than Golden Glue, yeah, I do vibe with someone like Leader because the difference is exactly what you're talking about. Leader has the goal to believe he could be like as good as Caps. Golden Glue's like, oh, shucks, I don't know, Lucy, I'll try kicking this football again, but I sure hope you don't pull it. Like, give me a break, mate. You don't even believe in yourself. Why the fuck would I believe in you when you don't believe in yourself?
I like your Peanuts, Rick and Morty.
He's just some character
there.
like that, isn't he? Yeah.
I'd watch it.
Pretty good.
But yeah, I think that this is often misconstrued. And my problem with this crusade against toxicity, because remember, this didn't exist as a concept, as far as I can tell, in video games.
No.
Before 2012 and Riot Light. And Riot Light introduced this concept, which I assume is taken from his psychology background. It was kind of a psychological trend, and then applied it to video games. Conveniently, by the way, the crusade against toxicity is an unsolvable problem, which in theory meant that Riot would need to employ him until the end of time, which, you know, I'm not going to go into Riot Light's other behaviors, but to say that he was extremely manipulative and really into people depending on him was kind of his MO. So it would not surprise me if that was the reasoning behind the creation of this scheme in the first place. But it also is,
as you say, that was not a fucking bug. It was a feature that could never be solved. Because the joke is, here's what people don't realize. It's the same concept if you've ever heard of it. It's called the euphemism treadmill, and everyone's going to know exactly what I mean the second I explain it. Just go back to what they used to say in medical documentation in the 1940s about people who were developmentally subnormal. Spoiler, that's one of the ones from like the 80s or something. Basically what someone would have called, now a word that people consider a slur. I mean, simple versions, by the way, the medical ones as well, moron, cretin, these are all actual like medical terms. What happens is then people who are normal colloquially start doing it as slang, go, you're a fucking moron, because they're trying to use the juxtaposition of like, you're extremely bot-fathom, even though they talk their mate. But then when it becomes ubiquitous, right, throwing around a lot of words for you guys out here, when it becomes ubiquitous, then the medical community goes, well, we don't want to just seem like we're just calling someone a moron. So they change the word, right? And that's when the treadmill goes round again. So then they go, you're developmentally subnormal. So then the joke is, then people start using that term and it never ends, right? So basically what I'm saying here is like, these terms will always eventually, basically it's like what Light figured out was this: even if he'd cured us all of today's toxicity, then we'd just reset the filters. Whoever was the worst would be at 0 again. Whoever was the best would be at 99, but you can never reach 100. And we'd all go through the same struggle session again with the new terms and the new thing. Like eventually, the things Monty's talking about, they would have got to that level. Eventually, no joke, it would have been considered toxic to like tell your teammates in a pro team to practice more. It would be considered toxic to stay. Why are you staying extra hours when this guy has like a sleep problem, so he has to sleep more hours, so you're getting more practicing. Like toxicity would never end because the definition was the goalposts were always moving. They were on a fucking island flying around the ocean.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like as this spread out into other games, because it's now pervasive, right? It's pervasive across all of competitive esports and competitive video gaming, and also it's used in esports in different ways that it's used when people are on the competitive ladder. In the competitive ladder, it's a lot of bigotry or whatever that they're trying to eliminate. But then the same word toxicity is used to describe esports players like getting mad at their teammate once a season, and the other problem that I see here is that because it has become viewed as so negative and it's so nebulous, I really wonder what these systems are doing to prevent competitive people from actually reaching the top. Like it's getting to the point where because of the policing on the ladder, I wonder how many up and coming players are just banned, like that could be the stars of tomorrow because they are caught in this toxicity cycle, because it's designed by nature to catch highly competitive people. So in a way, I'm curious if it is actually like hamstringing our ability to create new pro players.
This is not even speculation. It's 100% a factual, except it didn't happen. I'm just saying, like, if you put together the cases and how writer presidents go, the best CSGO player ever is called Simple. He would almost inarguably not only have been banned for many, many years. He said slurs on camera. He stole people's knives. He said outrageous things about people from other countries. He did all these things, right? He only got temporary small punishments because he was in CSGO. So his career would have been set back 2-3 years. He might even have had one of those like Jensen type bans where they just ban you for forever for shit you do on stream or fucking on the ladder or whatever. So we might not have had the same simple that we have in CS:GO now if he'd been in the Riot system. Like, I think if you just look at the precedent for they've banned people for far less than some of the things he did. So, like, that's one of the problems. I actually think you can tie this to the LCS, by the way.
But before you go on, let me put it this as a disclaimer. I'm neither Thorin or I is endorsing these behaviors or saying that they are in any way necessary. It's just the facts of what has happened in terms of history, right?
I also just don't judge people on what they do in video games. Like you guys can spend your lives fucking holding court over people in video games. I just like to play the video game and mute and get on my life. So I'm not in a position where I have to do that.
That's the other thing that's so crazy is you have a mute function within.
Oh no, Monty, that's toxic to say that because why should they have to? Remember, the entire mechanism, the lever on which this all turns, goes like this. I don't like something, so the rest of the world must change so that I don't feel that way anymore. Not even that doesn't happen. I must not feel this way anymore. That is these. So it's essentially the abdication of self-responsibility is where this all starts with. Because anyone else, by the way, who's a normal player, you just mute the person and get on. Yeah, but then one person won't be talking. Yeah, but it's better than the toxicity, right? Which is it? Do you want the toxicity or do you want the person shutting up? I just mute more. In fact, when I play League, I just at the start I do 10 clicks. I go mute, 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 mute. Well, 9 clicks. I guess I can't mute myself, can I? Here's the thing I was going to say. This is a bigger problem in NA than any other region in the entire world, Monty. And the way I know this is, did you see a tweet I did a few weeks ago? No, it was last week sometime. I basically just tweeted out as many superstar names as I could figure out from LCS and put that they had all been benched. The list is mental, mate. Like, you won't quite put it together until you see it. Like, I'll quickly pull something up here, because if I do it very, very quickly, it'll be funny, right? So, look, I'll just go down here. Let me just type something in. Because the list will blow your mind, mate. It's so mad. Here we go. Are you ready? I'll just do a really quick one, right? And obviously this has to fit in a tweet, so I couldn't add more. Let's just do a quick rundown. Jensen, benched. Alfari, benched. Svenskeren, benched. Ssumday, benched. Jizuke, benched. Meteos, benched. Doublelift, benched. Xmithy, benched. Soaz, benched. Treats, benched. Piglet, benched. Dardok, benched. Sven, benched. I had to stop there because of character limit. You are aware that bench is better than any fucking League of Legends team that ever played in LCS. What is that? That list essentially says that they think toxicity and talent are the same thing. They think they're fucking synonyms. What is the LCS? It's a meme. It's a fucking meme, Daddy. The only person who didn't get benched was Bjergsen because he was too busy getting part of the fucking company given to him and getting wrecked on a contract for 3 years that was underpaying him. Like, holy shit.
To be fair, I think Ssumday was in fact benched because of the import restrictions, not because of his behavior, but we don't know. That's true.
That means they still chose to play someone else over him, still benched. Point is that bench. My joke was LCS benches are talent magnets. They have a better fucking eye for talent than any scout in the LCS.
You know, it's funny too because
there's about like 4 MVPs listed there as well.
Because if you're benched, the other thing that's funny is like your player buyout tends to take a hit. So in theory, somebody could be swooping in
as well.
Yeah, you could swoop in if you're a different team and start buying up all the players who have been benched and actually end up. I mean, you can get Sven and Alfari right now. It's pretty sick. Start to your LCS core. Incredible.
And Dardok, he's there as well. Mate, you can have you can make a mad lineup out of benches right now. Like I said, better than most of the active teams in the league. And I tell you what, everyone would go, yeah, but Thorin, didn't you figure it out? They're all toxic, mate. If I brought them out of the nightmare fucking solitary confinement there and now and put them on my team, they'd be going, oh, thank you so much. I go, look, I'm not even going to listen to what you said. Just play the game. And they'd just bang you all out, wouldn't they? They'd be taking all these teams to town.
It's too good. It's too good. All right. Thank you for the conversation on toxicity. We're going to take a quick break, guys. And when we come back, we'll be talking to Lustboy from 100 Thieves, our first 100 Thieves guest. We'll see you in a couple.
Right, we're back. We've got our first guest for this segment, which is going to be Lustboy here, legendary Korean support player, OGN champion when he was on. Actually, back then, it would have been MiG Blaze. Then obviously he was on Azubu Blaze. Then he came and he was, well, after the other Blaze periods, which we don't talk about, he then came over to America, played on TSM, became a coach after that, even went back to Korea and coached briefly. Not a lot of people know that detail. Here's a piece of trivia you might not know or remember though, Lustboy, which is you directly caused me and Monty at great pain to ourselves and our egos to have to call Loco Doko, fucking stupid Loco Doko, Lord. We had to call him a Lord. It was like, what do you call it? Like, what's Lord like Korean? Like, Daejong or something. What is it? What's the fucking one for like night or something? Never mind. Monty doesn't know. Right. Basically, I mean, it's the famous thing that they call like the Count of Monte Cristo. So you peck Jew or whatever. There we go. Right. We basically made a bet when just before you joined TSM, when they had that Glebe guy, who I knew was just going to go off the rails, right? Loco bet us that TSM would win the split because he became the coach, didn't he? And we told him, like, there's no way, Loco. And so we made this stupid ass bet where if he won, we had to for 1 year call him Lord. And then because you joined, by the way, think how unfair that is, Lustboy. We made the bet when it was like TSM. Then he just got like literally a world-class support player to come across at the time when no imports were coming, play for them, and then obviously you just won that split, so then we had to start calling Lord for 1 year. So thanks, mate. Cheers.
Yeah, actually, forgot about that. Forgot about the bet for a while.
I wish I could forget about it. I did honor the bet though. People will notice I called him Lord for the next 1 year. It's true.
Yeah, we did. We honored our bet. Also, Lustboy, I'm very curious about you joining 100 Thieves now, especially now that Reapered is here, because you and Reapered used to play together on Mig Blaze before I know you kicked him out of the team personally.
I did.
Right.
I mean,
but to me, it's funny because the first time I met you and Reapered was in New York in 2012 at MLG, which was the first time a Korean team had ever played against a Western team, basically, in the West, at least in the West, I should say.
Yes.
And so you guys were on the team then, and then now in 2021. 9 years later, you guys are now coaching 100 Thieves together. So first off, how did this happen? How were you coming to 100 Thieves? And then how did Reapered come in, and how is your relationship now? Apologies for the brief hiatus there. We're back with Lustboy now. His mic has been fixed. In fact, it's entirely new this time around. He's at the 100 Thieves compound. They do have very nice streaming booths there. It's a beautiful facility. I've been there many times now. Was there at the opening?
But he'd gotten over this. People told me he didn't have problems communicating in English anymore.
It was a hardware issue, not a software. He updated his drivers in his brain with the English language pack, which is very different because when I first knew him 9 years ago, that was not the case.
Yes. Anyway, once he was talking about the idea of like, what is your relationship with Reapered? Because even though he joked about it, he did leave Blaze on fairly like. I mean, in English, you'd say acrimonious. Might be a big word. Basically, just means that not mutually. People didn't enjoy it. Like, I'm sure he was upset when he got kicked from Blaze. I'm sure you guys, for whatever reason, you didn't enjoy something about playing with him. So how do you come back together all these years later? Was there a story behind it? Did you ever confront any of this? Did he ever talk to you about what happened?
So basically, when we go back to MI's Blaze, the head coach made us put a vote, right? I think it was like 1 yes, let's kick the Reaper, and 1 I don't care, and I think there's 2 no, but I don't know if it matter. Like there was only 1 yes, but he got kicked anyway.
That's Korea for you, okay?
Well, it was so we just blame on air now. We just blame on air the old MIG/Azubu/CJ coach. And by the way, this is classic pro gamer behavior because so many. It's not like Korea; it's just pro gamer behavior because so many of them are like passive, meek people that they would literally just say, "I don't care" about their potential teammates instead of coming down with some sort of conclusion or opinion. Okay, so to move on, now you have Reaper, you are working with him. What are the changes that you and Reaper are making for 100 Thieves this split? Because the changes have been really good.
I think Reaper has a really interesting method for his coaching. I can't tell so much, but it seems to be working really well with our roster. I think working with Reaper is almost like eye-opening, and everything he does is so simple and so obvious, but clearly I haven't done them, and makes me think, holy fuck, I'm fucking stupid. Why haven't I done it? Yeah.
I heard one thing that's been like some players like it, some really don't, is that he does, like, I mean, you've watched some before, in anime shows, Lustboy, there's always the character who's the main character is always a genius, and he's always sitting like this, like, next plan I must do, so that you did not expect I would do that, but I expected that you would expect that I would do. Right? That's what people tell me Reapered's like, because if you ever see how he drafts, it's like he even drafts stuff that the player didn't know was going to be picked, and then they're like, "What? That's for me?" And then he's like, "Yeah, don't worry. Like, listen, I've got this is all chess. Like, is it true? Is he a mastermind?"
Yeah, I mean, our draft meeting has been like 10 minutes, like 15 minutes. Despite like TSM draft meeting has been like 5 hours. Like case number 800.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, we had only one case and it's been pretty good.
and this is very interesting to me because I want to talk to you about your draft because it's changed a lot. In the first week, you have Abadage, you're playing Karma the whole time. You win all your games, but people are saying, oh, we want to see something else. And so you start to change. We get to see Abadage's Akali, which she's very well known for, is very meta, of course, right now. But this last week, one thing that I thought was really smart was your Ziggs pick for Huhi. And this is not a pick that we have seen a lot in other regions. So Ziggs Senna was the bot lane you were running, which I thought was very, very good and very clever. Now, in other regions, we've seen it be played by Prismal in Academy in North America, which you smile, so I assume you got it from him. I assume you stole it from Prismal now that I see your face. But also Hjarnan over in some of the amateur scene in Europe. But with the Ziggs buffs that were coming in, this seemed like a really cool strategy for you guys to use, and one that I think will be copied a lot by teams in the future. But how did you decide to use this strategy?
Actually, our team has a lot of like big fan of Ziggs, like Freeze and Huhi.
Well, you weren't a big fan of Ziggs. That's why you actually got rid of him and replaced him with Reapered.
Did you get the joke on that one?
Yeah,
all right, continue. Sorry.
All right, keep going. Just checking.
Yeah, I mean, not the Jigsaw, but we have big fan of Ziggs, the champion. Yeah, and he got pretty decent buff in this patch. So we just tried like a few games and it seemed pretty good. So we just decided to use it, regardless of the Prismer. Yeah, it wasn't the yeah.
By the way, he said there also Freeze obviously is a coach of one of the Thieves. There's another thing people don't understand about how the coaching staffs are changing. In their team, they actually have people who are former AD carry, support, and top lane on their team as coaches. So in theory,
all
like,
former
they
professional players.
They can suggest things themselves. They can go and scout things, and bring them to the players.
So with the Ziggs changes, what do you think was the biggest change? Was it all the changes are good, but a lot of people say that the ability to clear the caster minions in one cycle is the biggest change rather than the ult speed. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. The Q is the most like noticeable change for sure.
So I always hated Ziggs as a champion because I still am scarred by EasyHoon winning a bunch of games on SKTS with Ziggs and just forcing these really long game states. Are you afraid that Ziggs is going to do this now? Because we've seen him use now in mid lane as well. I think it's very interesting to see him in the kind of bot lane role. But is this a champion that you think needs some changes and is going to become more effective or better in the meta now?
It can make like kind of late game sometimes, but I don't think you can abuse the champion every time since the Ziggs has kind of weak laning in mid. And
Right.
yeah, bottom is also situational. Yeah, so I don't think we have to worry about it. But the champion is pretty good.
When you say it's situational, is it because of the support, like the support Senna, or is it because he's good into certain matchups, or both?
I think it's only good in certain matchups. Yeah, that's correct.
What are those matchups?
I can tell.
You can't tell. Okay. I'm pretty sure many pro players will be able to say that, but I respect your commitment to secrecy.
How do you convince your bot lane to actually play with this though? Like, I mean, if you ever look like FBI, whenever I watch him play, he looks like he's someone who just wants to be on like super strong mechanical champions. Like, let's smash the lane. Like, was it hard to convince the players to want to try this bot lane out?
It was pretty simple because FBI, he just wanted to play Senna, and Huhi just has a really large champion pool.
He used to play mid, so I'm sure he's used to playing it.
Yeah, it was like everything was kind of natural.
Fair enough.
So how have you, I kind of know the answer to this because, you know, I talk to Papa Smithy and I talk to Freeze sometimes. So I've spoken about, and Reapered, obviously. What are the changes for the coaching staff? Do you have a new job with the coaching staff this split compared to last split? How has Reaper changed up the role? Yeah, what do you do?
What do you do?
So, originally, I signed as role coach with Andrei Thieves, which was supposed to like do individual one-on-one coaching and scout players. But once the Reaper joined, he asked for one more assistant coach for LCS team. And I guess I was the only one available at the moment. So since then, I'm working with LCS team closely. And if you're wondering, I kind of do lots of like side works, such as like collecting VOD examples and looking at numbers, like statistics, and coaching bottom lane sometimes. Yeah, I think those are the main 3 jobs for me.
When you're looking for stuff and doing like the VOD examples, you say, are you actually ever watching like LCK, for example? Do you take any examples from that? Are you mainly trying to just look at people who play in LCS or the NA region? How does it go?
Obviously, I have to watch every LCK and LPL as a coach, and on top of that, I watch like lots of solo queue, like solo ranked from the Korea. For example, I have been watching Ziggs one tricks recently and just collect how they use Q, how they use W, how they use art, and how they itemize. Yeah, those kind of thing.
Is there anyone right now on Korean solo queue who's like some amazing Ziggs one trick who's like super high up?
Yeah, there's like one Ziggs one trick with like 60 win rate right now.
Oh, 60% win rate in Korea. Holy moly, okay.
What's the ID? I'm curious.
Ziggs 좀 믿어줘.
Ziggs zombie?
Okay. Ziggs 좀 믿어줘.
What's dojo?
Believe in Ziggs, basically.
Ah, right. Believe in Ziggs. Right, okay. Listen, he's living up to his name. He does believe in Ziggs. No, I would if I had 60% win rate on Korean solo queue. That's pretty good.
So with 100 Thieves, you guys made the big change to bring in Abadage. This is a huge transfer. And I want to talk about your playoff performance because I've told this story before, but I talked to Papa Smithy and I said that I've never seen a team be winning 4 games, but lose 3-1 in a best of 5. And so you guys were very close to being quite a good team last split. And I think people look at the loss and they didn't understand that if you upgraded mid lane, that you would be very competitive. What was it like to be part of that playoff series, and what was the change for Abadage in between splits? How did that happen, and what were you working on when he first came to 100 Thieves?
Sorry, the question was kind of long for me.
Wait there 1 second. Wait there 1 second. Right, when did you actually join 100 Thieves? Just answer that first.
I think this last December, I think.
Right, so you were there during spring split.
Yes.
And in this spring, in the playoffs, Monty didn't say the series, but when you played against TSM in the lower bracket, 100 Thieves against TSM, the joke was all the analysts watched this series, and in draft, you're winning all the time. In the game, the team's winning all the time, but you managed to lose 3-1. And this seems like Monty's joke is that he's never seen a team ever being like ahead that many times and then lose. But because of the loss, people thought, right, the team's just rubbish. They didn't know that if you change mid laner, maybe it's a really good team. So did you have any thoughts on that playoff series, what the problems in spring were?
I think we set on like bad direction. Like we had a lot of problems during the spring split, but instead of trying to fix the problem, we only did like band-aiding the problems instead of actually fixing it. So
Yes.
it just stacks up, and it finally like bloom in the playoffs. I think
Right, put it this way: if a Korean coach did those drafts and his team was ahead and you lose 3-1, the Korean coach won't be happy, right? Like there'll be punishment, like there'll be some harsh words, right?
yeah.
I think though that after the playoffs and you suddenly Ssumday has his green card, so you can import a player.
Mhm.
Why did you like Abadage? What was it about his play that you wanted on the team?
There was some candidates, but Abe was clearly doing the most DPS and like in some tough situations, and he looked really stable during his landing page, and a lot of team fights. He knows what his role is, so yeah, I think it was kind of obvious choice.
Right, you don't have to answer this, but we do have to ask it. Can you tell us any of the other candidates who weren't picked? Was there anyone sexy? Was there a big name that we might be enjoying if we were here? Just for fun.
I think there were some big names, but yeah, obviously can't tell.
Ah, okay. Maybe in the future. Okay.
I'll tell you later, Thorin. I know. I think many of them, are pretty obvious. But
I actually know
Abadage,
some of them, but
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. But we have to ask. But yeah, I think with the state of Schalke, it made it a lot easier because now apparently they want to sell the team, so they needed the money, and also Abadage's contract was up at the end of the year, so they had an opportunity to sell him now, whereas he would have been a free agent later.
Made sense for everyone. It's one of the few times the deal just makes sense for everyone.
Yep. Absolutely. So coming into this season, what was your practice with Abadage? Because he came quite quickly, so you had a lot of time to prepare. So how did you, as a coach, try to bring him into the team and create the new teamwork and system that you have?
It's not necessarily like we need extra work because of Abadage. Basically, we started with zero foundation because Reapered just came in as head coach. Yeah, we just started from zero, and yeah. I think at the start we were kind of focusing on communication issues because in the spring split we were kind of band-aiding problems with like if someone is making mistake, like A player is making mistake, you would like focus on B player should communicate even more to prevent A player making mistakes, but that's not even a problem. A player shouldn't even be making mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So,
If people didn't get that, what he basically meant was if one player makes a mistake, instead of being able to fix his problem, they would just tell the other player, like give him even more communication, say something extra before or afterwards so that it would make up for it. But obviously the problem with that is the first person didn't actually fix their issue and it'll still be present. Yeah. It's a big problem, obviously, because one of the issues here, right, is when a problem happens during the split, you're still trying to win the games that week. You don't have, 2 months to fix everything. So you kind of just have to try and win that next game, right?
yeah. So we are trying to cut the unnecessary communications. I think that was kind of big project for us.
Based on your practice with Abadage and now with Reapered, did you expect to do this well at the start of the summer split? Because right now you guys have won almost all of your games. You are 7-2. You are only one game outside of first place in LCS. Is this what you thought would happen, or did you think it would take more time?
I think we are gonna do well, but I think it's kind of a mix of the top teams are kind of having struggle with their internal problems. I don't know what it is exactly, but yes, internal problems, and the players are performing pretty well. So I think it's kind of a mix that
By
makes
the
us
way,
dominant.
oh, sorry. Yeah, go on. By the way, do you still have a good relationship with Reginald and TSM? Do you still have a relationship with them?
I think I do, but I haven't talked to them.
Okay.
Yeah, since then.
Would you like to play them maybe in the final and beat TSM? Would you like to play TSM in the final and beat them?
For sure, but I don't know if they can make it.
Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go. I like it. I like it. Yes.
I like it.
Finally, come over to the dark side. Yes.
So,
Yes.
so you say that the teams are having some internal problems. So I will not ask you about the internal problems, but I will ask you a question about LCS versus Korean teams.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience culturally, do you think Korean teams would be benching these players that have been benched?
Such as
Alfari?
Yeah, big name. Dardox, Sven, these are players that on their team were considered, best player or, like all LCS level. In Korea, do you think you would be benched in these situations? What's your opinion?
I think it's kind of a hard question actually. I think they should have known it like earlier. I think that's my guess.
Yes.
Yeah. If they had to bench it, I think they should have known it even sooner.
Right.
It's so wrong, I think.
In your experience, having played in Korean teams and now being in LCS, what are some of the biggest cultural differences that you have found between esports in Korea and esports in North America?
I think one of the biggest difference is there's so little talents in NA, so players have a lot of powers, and yeah, they just know that they're not gonna get benched until this season. Yeah.
We were talking earlier about this comment Doublelift where he said basically that all top players in some sense are toxic. And he gave the example of Faker, right? Well, I was thinking when I knew you were coming on the show, right? A lot of Western people think that how people are in interviews and on camera and on stream, they think that's who they really are as players, right? So they were shocked to hear that, oh my God, Faker, but he's the best. He's the most polite guy. Well, I was thinking of a guy from your team called Ambition, who literally, there used to be a famous meme that he had carried a baseball bat to beat his teammates up if they didn't listen. Korean players in your day when you were a pro player, if you have a problem with someone, I'm pretty sure they're pretty brutal, right? They just say if they got a problem or certain figures in the team, maybe the older figures, they can be pretty harsh.
Yeah.
There was so much in that year, though. That's the thing, Monty.
It's the facial expression is everything.
5 sentences from someone on the LCS.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk about some of your opinion of some of the other teams right now, because it without some star players like Alfari, Team Liquid is going to be a worse team. I don't know if Cloud9, maybe that's not having Sven is probably not their biggest problem. But we have seen these teams really struggle, but the big winners have been 100 Thieves, because you got a much better mid laner, and TSM because they haven't made any changes. But right now, to me, it doesn't look like there is much competition for 100 Thieves until some of these teams bring in their star players again. Do you feel the same way, that 100 Thieves is the number one team clearly?
I think for now, we are definitely performing the best among all the LCS team right now. And I think LSC9, they should bring Jiben. I think Jiben is playing way better than King. I think King is been making kind of simple mistakes. But yeah, King is kind of rookie player, so they can give him more time. I think that's fine if they wanna go make the King. And Tier, I think Arpari is better player. Yeah, they should bring Arpari back, I think.
All I'll say is this, just a little bit of juice from the constant drip feed pipe that I get. All I'm going to say is, I think the situation should be resolved fairly soon. There you go. It's all right. Don't worry, fans. Normal service will be resumed.
So this season overall, you've been in North America for some time, so I am interested to hear what you think about some of the problems with LCS at international competition, because you have won yourself some pretty big international competitions. I was there when you won WCG, for example. But in your case, what do you think are the issues when we see teams like Cloud9 maybe struggle internationally or LCS teams maybe not do so well? What do you think needs to change about North America?
I think the biggest problems are just low individual performance. Like every time you go Worlds, there's always one player, at least one player, getting gapped by like somebody. And if you get gap in at Worlds, it's not fixable. Just yes, the whole world is fucking doomed. It's over. So up to Worlds, you have to make the individual performance up to Worlds just to match the players. And the other problem is, I think the direction. Like for example, TSM always been playing like late game, kind of scaling defensive, but it's not gonna work very well at Worlds. And yeah, the Worlds team can punish those kind of play style really fucking well. So yeah, I think those two are the biggest problems.
I know what you mean by that, because that's one of the things that actually even a very, very famous LCS champion, Doublelift, I've seen him have the same problem, which is he is clearly like an amazing player. Like, I think there was times when he was as good as some of the Asian AD carries, especially bearing in mind not every team there is a winner of Worlds. You know, there's teams that are just decent teams, the 3rd seed, the 4th seed in modern day. But I always felt like when he went to those tournaments, it's like he psychologically beat himself before he even played. And then in the tournament, if he played bad, he thought, oh, they're all just too good for me and I can't catch up and I play in a worse region. And it's like before he even played the game, he lost. You know, he didn't even go in. Whereas if you think of some of the underdog teams that have done well, like the Misfits a few years ago, some of these other squads from Europe, they're the teams where they go in with a true underdog spirit. Like, look, we're not supposed to win, but we could. Like, let's just go for it. Let's just forget everything else. Like, play the game of your life. Like, we could do this. I even think Flash Wolves used to be a great example. Like, they knew they shouldn't beat SKT, but they could. They knew if they get a chance in the game, they're going to go for it. So something about American mental seems to be the problem.
Yeah, that's the case too. Yeah, for sure.
When you say that players are getting gapped, what is it about the North American region that makes it very difficult for players to reach the same skill level as other places? Because many teams will boot camp for weeks before MSI or Worlds in order to become better. So what do you think the biggest issue is?
I think NA players are kind of weak at recovering from their own mistakes, or like every time you go boot camp for the first week, NA teams would do pretty well actually, like beating even Korean teams, China teams sometimes, and they will be so hype, like, oh, NA can win Worlds this time for sure. And week 2, week 3 at boot camp, every other team's getting better, and they would just punish you. And NA teams cannot recover from the past. I think that's yeah.
I even heard some stories, which I can't lie, in kind of an anime kind of setting would be funny. I've heard some stories where if there's a really, really good Korean team, and it's a team like TSM's a famous example, because obviously they know you've got lots of Western fans, they know this team's the champion from LCS. I've even heard when they already know, like, right, we're too good for them, we're beating them in scrims, they just start doing stuff in scrims, like trying to humiliate the opponent, like, you know, play like bad bot lanes that they just win with anyway, or just like play a stupid pick that they would never play. And then when they just dumps to the LCS team's like, oh, what chance do we possibly have? Because it's like they've just been wrecked completely. Anything like that ever happen?
Sorry, can you ask us? What's the question again?
I've heard that the top teams sometimes also try to humiliate the Western teams, the Koreans. Like, they'll purposely play bad matchup just to prove, like, you can't beat me. It's like an anime, like, you know, nothing you can do gets through. I block everything.
I haven't heard. Yeah, I haven't heard about that.
Oh, get to know. glad you can learn something here. Right?
What was the comp that was played by the Korean All-Star team in what was that 2014? I think.
SKT.
Yeah, the when they were
picked their
picking for
against
skins.
Fnatic. Yeah, the world skins. They picked them against Fnatic in a real game.
Also, Frost at one point picked an entire ninja comp. I'm trying to remember, but they only picked ninja champs. So
Actually, Western teams do it too, Monty. Like SK picked that all glacial comp this week. I mean, my joke was someone told Jezis, "You may as well put this whole fucking team on ice, mate." He misheard them. Boom, boom. Right, there you go. So I'm here all week. It's okay. Don't worry.
So, Lustboy, I want to ask you about some other games that you played this week specifically, because you guys have done so well so far in LCS. What was the problem with the CLG game? Because you almost got perfect gamed, and CLG, I think, has had a bad reputation this year. I think many coaches and players think they are better than their record. But what was it about that game this week? Did you not prepare for it as much because it was CLG, or what were the problems that you had with 100 Thieves?
It was definitely off guard. We had bad draft and bad individual performance for sure. I think in hindsight, we should have seen it coming. Like Broxa was kind of playing in Bai, and they were playing Guardian and solo queue, but without they would prepare like different style. There's no way they play Bai on stage, and it was off guard to us. Yeah.
Monty, the thing you have to realize is, we always point out like the magical connection between names and what they manifest into. That's why it used to be actually a massive thorn in their side to be called Counterlogic Gaming, because when they were supposed to be a top team, they would always lose. It's now genius, Monty. Now is when it kicks in, because whenever they're supposed to be the worst team, they always beat one of the top teams, and then you go, maybe they're good. No, they're not. They're back down to the bottom again. So I think it's amazing now, because what's mad is it's been like that was like a funny meme. It's real now. It keeps happening every season.
I think it's great. I mean, living up to the name is definitely what they've been doing for the last few years.
Yes.
I mean, it goes back to even when they started winning. It was incredible that they could make like an MSI final with that roster, which I don't, guys, you play that MSI 100 times and that happens like once out of 100 times that they actually do that well.
Mid laner, the most important role, now plays support for Lustboy's team. He's not even a mid laner anymore. So if that's a miracle one, I don't know. Like, I'm pretty sure they sold their souls to get that MSI final, mate.
Also, Stick stays on Golden Guardian, so I think that tells you what you need to know. But
is that one?
Jokes aside, what do you think about the Vi pick? Because you said you didn't anticipate that they would pick it, and Phase Rush Vi to me doesn't seem strong right now, but it does seem to work with Brox's playstyle, but I don't know if it's actually good in general. So why were you surprised by the Vi pick?
I don't think it's necessarily a good pick right now, but can like spike rare with the Divine Thunder, since the item is really busted right now. And yeah, I think it just fits in their playstyle. Just diving in, pick earlier by Rakan, Rare, those kind of champions. I think it just fits in their playstyle, and they just know how to play the team comp.
Do you think
it's a pretty good way, to be fair, if you want to band-aid a team? It's like, if I wanted to band-aid a team, it's an LCS team, Monty. I'm going like, right, you know those words, macro, tempo, like, forget them all. You don't need to know anything. Here's what happens, right? You all pick champions that have ults that go in, and then you all just press R. Like, when he presses R, you all press R. In fact, if he hasn't pressed R, reach over and press R on his keyboard. Everyone go in, either you win or you die. At the end of the game, we all get Chipotle. Right? Is everyone on? Team in 5. 1, 2, 3, 5, and then you go.
What I love, I heard this on the broadcast too, and when I was watching this game, and I completely agree with it. I forget if it was Kobe or Azale who was talking about this, so apologies, but basically saying that if you are maybe not a great team or you don't have a lot of coordination, what you always want to do is go for really easy compositions to engage with, hard engage, front to back team fighting, lots of AoE, and then in this case you throw in a global ult with Galio. And for me, I don't understand why teams don't do this more if maybe they are not like one of the top teams in a region, because even though it may not be the best way to play, you can still get wins. And this shows you can get very convincing wins running these kind of strategies as long as everyone commits to the engage, right? Is this something that you would, as a coach, when you have a new team, do you start them with these kind of team compositions?
I think that's a way. I think that's a way to play coach for sure.
If you were coaching CLG, is this what you would do?
I think I would have done it actually, since the Ssumday is really good at engaging support. And yeah. Walter,
Obviously, the first thing he'd do is go, "What am I doing with my life? I'm on CLG. Oh, I used to be a champion. Bloody hell. Oh, I was at World's top 8. I'm on CLG right now." And then he'd just do whatever he could, He's Korean. So he'd always put in his effort. He'd always put in effort.
I mean, yeah. Actually, before I joined the 100 Thieves, the other candidates was actually CLG. So yeah, that could have been me actually.
Oh, you dodged a bullet. That's what we say in English. You dodged a bullet. You just got past it. Whoa, that could have been me. There, but for the grace of God, go I.
Well, he could have won that game though instead.
Yeah.
But I think losing the battle was probably worth winning the war. So when you were joining 100 Thieves, you say you had an option to join CLG. Why did you pick 100 Thieves in the end?
100 Thieves just seemed like clearly better work. So yeah, they were kind of backup option for me.
And more money? Was there any of that? Any, the old Benjamins? Any more? A little bit more money on 100 Thieves, maybe? Listen, Cash App, it's right behind you. I bet there was a little bit more, wasn't there, than CLG? Okay, I see you. I see your swag. I got all the shirt on, everything. That's one thing I love about Koreans, by the way, when they go to LA. Everyone stops being all like dressed all
wearing
Louis
Vuitton shirt.
I love it, mate. I love it. It's like, you remember the time, Monty, when I can't think what tournament it was now. Oh no, it was when me and you were actually at like OGN Champions. I think it was actually like season 5, some of the one where KT got rocked by SKT, and it was the one where, if you remember, they showed Imp and he was wearing a shirt, and then people looked up online, and it was like $5,000 or something.
It's a t-shirt.
And he was just flexing. He was just flexing on everyone in the whole building, and I was like, God bless this man, because I love him. I fucking love that guy.
It was like the world's ugliest shirt too. It was like a full screen print of like the Virgin Mary.
I know exactly like what.
But yes, I appreciate your Louis Vuitton bomber jacket that you wore today.
Yeah.
So as you look forward, do you think 100 Thieves will have real competition this season? Because it looks like you guys are just so dominant, and you play so many different styles right now that it is hard for me to see. Because if we go through your players, Ssumday looks like he's coming back into form. Abadange's incredibly good. Closer can play so many different jungle champions, and it seems that Abadange works better with his more aggressive style. And then some people would say that FBI and Huhi are the best bot lane in LCS, or at least the best at laning. So is there a future where you see this team maybe having some problems? Because right now it seems like you've put together all the right players together to win.
Mm-hmm. I think if I have to choose one, I think C9 can be the computer for us. Like if they put the Ziban back, but I don't think they can make it with King, right? As LS4 now, and I think we look better only because they have like internal problems, and obviously we are performing pretty well. So yeah, I think that's the only reason we look kinda dominant right now.
Do you think there's any...
Monty, if you put in a player like King, right, it's a gamble. Like, it could work out really well, but if you bring him out, it could mess up the synergy. So basically, I've heard from within Cloud9, their philosophy is if you come at the King, you best not miss. So, see what I did there?
The old Wired quotes.
There we go.
So when you look at the roster of Team Liquid, they look like, if they put Alphari in, very strong individually again, they almost, won Spring and went to MSI. Do you think they are more or less of a challenge than C9 with Sven?
I think they are less challenging because their bottom lane has been performing pretty well and pretty bad, honestly. tactical. And yeah, I think it's
Just
been
he didn't name core. You'll notice he didn't name core. He just said tactical
tactical. Have
and
been,
core.
honestly, yeah.
The thing is, though, if you're a support pro, you can't talk shit on Core JJ because he used to be an AD carrier. Was like, you know what? This is actually hard. I'll just take the easy role, swap to support, make 2 Worlds finals, become a world champion, then go, you know what? It's not even hard enough. So he came to NA. He took NA to the final of MSI, beat Invictus Game. And then he's like, what more can I do? And they were like, what if you just put in a guy who just instantly? He's like, well, you know what? I'm just a support player, not a miracle worker.
To be fair, he just leaves him there and roams all over the map most of the time.
That's pretty ball, I can't lie. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. By the way, I've got a question for you. On your team right now, Lustboy, you have Ssumday, and he was literally a pro player back in season 2 and 3 when you were a pro player, and he's still playing now. It is 2021, Lustboy. Here's the question. 1, how does he do it? And 2, why aren't you still playing? You could be getting millions. Look how bad these support players are in LCS. You could be getting millions.
Yeah, technically I could have been playing right now, but I lost a lot of motivation when I was a player. Yeah, so I stopped playing, and I think Ssumday has been doing pretty good. I think like until this spring split, I think he was performing pretty poorly actually. But once Reapered came to 100 Thieves, he got some special care from Reaper, and yeah, he got
the special care sounds like a hell of a euphemism.
I know.
when you get the...
all I'm going to tell you, Lustboy, is this: if Reggie's willing to pay $6 million for Sword Art, he's not even Korean. I think I can get you like 10 million. Listen, all you have to do is come back for 1 year, $10 million. Like we can do this. I'll be your agent on this one. Just let me. I'll call Reggie. I have a good relationship with him. Don't worry.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I think I can back to Challenger like in 1 month.
Yeah.
Do you think regarding Ssumday's performance and Reapered coming in, do you think that it was more mental for Ssumday, or do you think that Reapered being able to speak Korean and being a former top lane professional himself helped more? Why do you think he was able to help Ssumday so much?
I think it was actually a bit of everything you just mentioned, like being able to speak Korean and mindset and mental problem. I think Ssumday already has the ability to perform pretty well, but his mindset and like motivation and not being able to speak Korean were kind of blocking his mentor. But once Reaper came, everything is going pretty well for him.
Monty, I can actually exclusive reveal what happened. What happened was Reapered came in and he goes, "Oh, Ssumday, what's going on?" And he said it in Korean, and Ssumday didn't even speak in Korean. He just said in English, like, I kind of suck at the moment, man. Like, I don't know. And he goes, like, "You've forgotten who you are. You're a Korean top laner. Look at me. Look at my eyes. We are Korean top laners. We are the lineage of Shy, Flame, Macnoon, Reapered." Of course, he named himself, you know. He kept going, Save, Smeb. Some people say Marin. I don't think he's that good. I thought, fucking hell, Reaper, he's world champion. He said, listen, I don't think he's that good. He goes, Marin. He kept going, the Shy, Naguri. And he goes, you're supposed to dominate this region. You're playing in LCS. You know, they still let Solo play in that region. And then he brought in Darshan and he said, do you want to end up like this? And he goes, God, no. And he goes, right, remember who you are. And then all of a sudden, he got that little bit in his neck. And then he... Give me all the minions. Split pushing time. There you go. That was an exclusive thing. It really happened. I was there. I saw it.
Close enough, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. See, he confirmed it.
So you said you mostly work with the bot lane, but were you doing any kind of scouting and solo queue for Ssumday at all, or was that mostly Reapered's job as opposed to yours?
I do every position, but yeah, it's just mainly bottom. But yeah, I have done like some top or jungle sometimes. Yeah. But yeah.
Since you have been watching Ssumday since the start of his career, what do you think are his biggest strengths as a player?
I think his biggest strength is his big like weak side warrior. He's been pretty good at being on weak side, and he understands a lot of macro since he's been playing LCK. He used to play in LCK, so he understands a lot of game macros. So almost every situation he can adapt in the game without like explaining. I think those are the strengths.
Do you think that part of the problem was that if his biggest strength is being a weak side top laner, that having a kind of bad mid laner was really a problem for him in the last year or so?
Yeah. So we had like resource blackward. Yeah, so we call it like resource blackward. Our mid took a lot of resource since they had weaker laning, and our top was being on weak side, so we only had to play bottom side. So yeah, it was kind of a problem, and we were trying to fix the problem, but yeah, it didn't work well, and we only had to play through bottom side.
I will say that is one thing I always used to get very confused by in LCS. Actually, Monty, in the years before Lustboy was there, the ones when they had the bad 100 Thieves teams a couple of years back, people always used to say, no joke, the experts on the broadcast, they were always like, Ssumday's the best player. They've got to play hard through him and give him the carry trap. Like, have you ever watched this guy? His entire career was being like a god on shit like Maokai and just playing weak side and then joining the fight correctly, tanking for everyone and doing good damage while he did it. The whole point that makes someone like Ssumday like Impact OP and why they can play forever is that they're just way overqualified to be fucking tank support weak side players, but they can do it. It's what makes them OP.
And you can see that too, because when Ssumday actually won LCK, when he won his championship with KT Arrows, he was like playing Maokai, and it was mostly, I mean, you have to remember he had Rookie on his team, and Rookie was clearly like the best player on that roster, and Kakao was also playing in that series. He was playing some carry junglers like Nocturne in some of their wins.
Yep.
And so when you have players like that, they didn't have to play through either. I mean, they definitely weren't going to play through bot lane because Hachani is like the worst player to ever win a Korean title. What do you think about Hachani? What do you think about Hachani, Lustboy? I think Hachani is the worst LCK champion ever. Do you agree?
I kind of agree. I actually forgot about him until now.
What's great is that he almost said that politely, but it made it sound like more of a diss. I forgot he actually existed. Yeah, but I guess he would be Monty. Yeah, now that I know he exists again. Yeah, it's pretty good.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break in just a minute, guys, and get Odoamne on the show to talk about LEC. Thank you very much, Lustboy, for your time joining us and talking about 100 Thieves. Sorry about the mic issues you had earlier, but good luck in the rest of your season. I'm looking forward to 100 Thieves' first LCS title for sure, so please don't disappoint me. I want you to be your coaching staff are all my favorite people. You, Freeze, Reapered, got Papa Smithy. So I really fucking want you guys to win because I'm going to come to the party afterwards. It's going to be really fun. So thanks a lot, guys. We're going to take a break and we'll come back with Odoamne in just a couple minutes.
Right, we're back. Speaking of great weak side top laners, we've of course got Odoamne here, played in many great teams over the years, a lot of the different H2K lineups, did place top 4 worlds, I'll just say that. Which, by the way, if you're keeping track, is checks notes better than Team TSM has ever done. Probably ever will. So, being as he eclipsed all of their entire history in one tournament, also, interestingly enough, he's obviously a guy famously, he used to get caught at the semi-finals in all the years. He went through the hard times with Schalke. He got onto Rogue. They were one of the top teams. And then all I remember was I was watching the final of Spring and I just turned off after game 2 because I assume you probably just won. You were just shit stomping them. So LEC champion, it's Odoamne from Rogue here.
Yep, here I am, the champion himself.
Dude, I hate to say this, but I was literally watching Game 5 of that final, and you guys were absolutely dominating that early game. I literally went into the kitchen to like start making dinner, and like I came back 20 minutes later, and your Nexus was being destroyed, and I literally in my house yelled "What the fuck" at the TV, and then had to rewatch the entire game.
Oh my god! I mean, I've thought that "what the fuck" many times throughout that series, both in Game 3 and Game 5. I was like, what the fuck, we are winning so hard. But yeah, I mean, tragedies like this happen multiple times.
Only for you.
Only for me, but
so here's a here's a question
He's
for
made a lot
you.
of brutal game 5s in his career as well. By the way,
Yeah, I
Monty.
know.
Oh, there's a lot of them.
actually, funnily enough, it's the first time in my very long career that I got reverse swept, and it was
reverse swept, right? Okay,
yeah, and it came at the perfect timing.
true.
So-
You made history that day in some ways.
In some ways, yeah.
I have an interesting question, given that Thorin mentioned, obviously, you and H2K making the semifinals at Worlds. Which would you rather have, the Worlds semifinal finish or an LCK or an LEC title? Excuse me.
Oh wow, that's hard considering that I've chased like a final. I've chased a final for like so many years now, but I don't know. The way I see it is kind of like this, because my career was like so long, and individually I've had good performances, and I wouldn't want to be the guy that retired and was good but never won anything. So at the same time, the World semifinals for that time was a huge achievement for EU.
Still is.
So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of teams that topped it now, so it's maybe lost its value somewhat, but.
You see, I'm not sure going to the finals and then getting absolutely blasted is like super great. So
Yeah, I mean, considering I think that Worlds when we went to semifinals, SKT was our main scrim partner because that's just kind of like the only team that was left to scrim, and I think we got shit stomped 0-25 over like 5 days, and we were like, well, it ends after today anyway.
Okay,
so...
right, okay. Fair enough.
But I mean, I don't know. I would still take the World semis.
that is the correct choice, I think.
It is. I know fans won't think it because they'll think, win the trophy. But the point is, you get to play against like the actual best players in the world to do something like everyone always tries to downplay that run, right? They literally beat the champions of the LPL 2 out of 3 games. Like, let me know when your favorite team does that. Not in like 1 year, but like actually that was hard back then.
I mean, they downplay it a lot, and they're like, you drew Russian team Albus Nox, but at the same time, the other 2 draws that we could have drawn were like C9 and RNG. And yeah, you could make an argument that RNG would have been like a hard matchup, and I think it would have been like a really cool best of 5 and really back and forth, because Animal Bot Lane was kind of the name of the game with these 2 teams. But at the same time, yeah, you have 2 out of 3 to get an easy draw with Cloud9 and Albus Nox, and people are like, they're just focusing on the fact that we got wildcard. But yeah, as you said, at the same time, we beat LPL number 1 and we got first seed in our group. So you're gonna get an easy draw for quarters if you get first in your group. I mean, if you went second, we would have had like SKT, Samsung, and whoever else was it, and yeah, we would have maybe got shit stomped, But at the same time, it was deserved in a way.
What they don't mention is there's plenty of other teams in history have had a group without a Korean team in it and haven't gotten first place in the group. That's the point. And there's 2 other details. One, as you say, I actually think it would have been better if you got Cloud9 because it would be an awesome, battle. We've never actually had East versus West except for when Cloud9 played Fnatic a few years later. The other angle is this. They never bother mentioning 2 details about that ANX group. When ANX plays H2K, they're trash, not even good. You mean the team that beat Rocks Tigers? Excuse me, You mean the team that beat Rocks Tigers? The best team in the world, by the way, the Korean champions at the time. Secondly, G2 was in that group, the best team from Europe. It's not their fault. It's not his fault that Perks was too busy crying into a fucking handkerchief to go and play him in the quarterfinals, was he? At least the Russians had the balls to actually turn up. There you go, flamed everyone there. You have to understand, Odoamne, if I'm backed into a corner, I shoot my way out. Everyone can get it because there's no bad direction to shoot at that point in time.
I mean, it's just full of haters. It's like it's so much easier for people to just downplay everything and be hating than actually acknowledging that someone did like a good job, because that gives you Reddit karma and Twitter likes to just be a dick. Which Thorin, you know for sure because you're a legend in this aspect.
I mastered it, exactly.
You're the daddy here.
I merely adopted it. I was born in it, molded by it.
Also, you didn't mention that CLG was also in that group, and they had just come off a 2nd place finish at MSI, which I also said was an aberration earlier. So I don't believe they were actually good, but they did have some level of international accomplishment.
Also better than TSM's ever done in their entire career. Sorry, did I keep saying that out loud?
I think the real question is, someday maybe we'll be able to ask Bjergsen how many LCS titles he would have traded for a world semifinal placement. I wonder, like, what the number of LCS would it be all of them? Would it be just a couple of them? I'm curious.
At least half or something. You'd trade quite a few. You would trade quite a few because that's the thing that people are ignoring, right? What they're also ignoring is this. Even though in his case, right, when they went and played Samsung, like obviously it was fairly convincing win by Samsung, like it wasn't like a really great series or anything. Just the feeling though of getting to walk out on the stage in a semi-final, to even believe for 1 second, dude, maybe we could win this game. Like maybe it's even possible. That's got to be like such an amazing feeling, experience, thrill. People have just won like I'm sorry, towards the end of their careers especially, both Doublelift and Bjergsen looked like when they won LCS, they were sort of like, all right, thanks, another one of those. Yeah, put it on the shelf, will you? Like they looked like they didn't even care. It wasn't even like that hype, was it?
I mean, for us, it was at least for me personally, it was a really, really shit feeling because we got shitstorm 3-0, but I think throughout the whole series, except game 3, in game 3, I mean, sadly to admit, but it's kind of obvious we kind of just mentally
gave off a bit. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because game 1, we felt like we had such a good start and it was winnable, but then we threw. Game 2 was kind of also going good until we dropped the ball. And then after that, it was just 20-minute shitstorm. But yeah, I mean, my biggest regret from that run is just the fact that we didn't even take a win from Samsung when we felt like we could have. Because the only team that was shit stomping us at that Worlds was just like SKT. And
right.
Not proving anything against Samsung was kind of a shit moment, I guess.
Thing is, there was that one game I remember where Jankos was on Olaf and he, no joke, was up like 7 kills or something in the first like 15 minutes. But here's the thing, right? I remember all the fans when they lost that game just being like, I've always said that Jankos is mad overrated. He's just shit. He'll never do anything. I don't think he did actually, did he, NA fans? I don't think he didn't go on to like win any LECs or, MSI. By the way, it goes without saying none of you have ever done any of that. So didn't do anything, didn't make the finals of Worlds. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but he made 4 semi-finals of Worlds, But anyway, Reddit wins again, and probably not as good as like, I don't know, fucking who even would they pick from TSM? Spicker, isn't it? Can't really get on Spicker's level, can he?
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was this like narrative about Jankos being overrated, which was completely crazy because this guy was miles ahead of any EU jungler at that point, which is
mad good, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, because this is something that he always does as a meme, right? But it almost looks like he half believes it. So I want to know if you have this problem, right? One of the things pros tend to do is if they're just not at their absolute peak anymore and they're not 21, they say 25, they all buy into this stupid thing of like, my back, I'm just an old bloody man. Oh, I can't play the mechanical champions. And I always tell Jankos, like, listen, maybe you can't play it against like fucking Tarzan or like, the best jungler in the world, but like you can definitely play those champions in like LEC, mate. Like you don't buy that bullshit, do you? Because I've seen some of the last seasons, you still have carry games. Like you don't buy the like, my arthritis, I can't move the mouse. Like you don't buy that, do you, Odoamne?
I mean, I feel like in a way most of the pros are insanely like they're like chasing perfection so much that they're just like, at least for me, I feel like if I don't play a specific champion at the level of a really good like one trick, like for example, if there's a one trick Riven and I don't play Riven to his level, I feel like my Riven wouldn't be like good enough for LEC, because I feel like,
okay.
I mean, it's just the nature of competition, you need to showcase something that brings out the best of your abilities. And when you feel like there's a champion like that you don't have absolute mastery of, but you still play like better than 90% of the players. I mean, some people have this thing where they feel like it's not good enough, and I kind of have it sometimes with some picks. So, I mean, it's kind of bullshit. I know it's stupid deep down that I might refuse to play champions that I'm not like consider myself one of the best in the world at those champions. So I can relate to that in a way.
Wait a minute though, because the problem I have with this is, right, I don't know if you heard any of the rant we were doing about Ssumday, but in Ssumday's case, he literally, not only his whole game was based on being weak side. I think if you ever listen to interviews, he has kind of the mentality of a weak side player. It's sort of like, I'll just do what you guys say, and like you can be the star. Like I know that you actually aren't totally that way. Like like if you can pick Camille and carry, you'll do it, right? So do you think actually people, because everyone tries to just make you like the weak side player on every team, but in some of the teams you've been in the last couple of years, like your strength sometimes is carrying, right? So what's your mentality for top lane?
I mean, weak side is a bit of a meme. It's just kind of like the dynamic of League right now, where if you get both sides ahead, you're getting effectively 2 people ahead, so it's easier to control the map in
Right.
that sense. But the way League works is top lane is kind of more weak side, I guess, because jungler doesn't really spend a lot of time there. But my mentality around top lane is that when the jungler has that like small window where he's next to me, I need to make as much use of his time as possible because I don't get much of it, and in the same regards, I need to waste enemy jungle's time when he's on the top side. So I feel like it's a bit of the meme with weak side because people are just branding it like, oh, you just need to be weak side, everyone's just ignoring you. But at the same time, you're kind of walking a very fine line between being really good at top lane and just being kind of average, because a lot of people are not able to juggle this sort of responsibility, I guess, because since jungle is so little time around you, if you make a mistake, that mistake is very apparent and there's no one to like save you, So that's why people are like, oh, you're very good weak side or very bad weak side, because everything you do is so obvious, and it's just kind of like a meme at this point where you're just being branded weak side, when in reality that's just how the game is. There's just no point for the jungle to be there a lot of time because it doesn't reward you as much as being on the other side.
Yeah, and to explain this to people who don't understand it, there's like a lot of factors that go into this. So as part of the evolution of top lane, when people finally figured out that having map presence and mobility was the most important thing, obviously you see the rise of TP in the top lane as kind of an essential spell. Well, what this does is that it obviously lessens potential kill pressure in the top lane because you're not running an aggressive summoner spell. It also means that it's more of their duty to take teleports on the other side of the map potentially in order to help out the bot lane. Like Odoamne says, it's also getting 2 people ahead. There's also the fact that dragon spawns earlier into the game, so the way jungler's path tends to be more around dragon because heralds will spawn 3 minutes later. Also, this Herald spawn timer is a minute later. Also, second Herald is significantly less impactful than the first Herald. So once you get the first Herald, there's not a lot of reason to be on the top side of the map anymore. Many compositions that are playing aggressive early are trying to snowball off the bottom side of the map because they want to play around the Drake stacking. So there are all these factors that kind of contribute to making top lane a less focused role in the current meta. Is that fair to say, Odoamne?
The thing that he said there, though, that was key, that a lot of people will have missed, is you notice he slid in there, Monty, that another job of top lane, are you ready, fans, because you don't think about this, is to actively draw the attention of the enemy jungler. Because guess what? When he's ganking you in your lane, he can't be ganking the bot lane and getting them ahead. So believe it or not, you have to very carefully walk a tightrope in the longest lane in the game of, I need to play aggressively enough the enemy jungler tries to come and I waste his time, but I don't die. Now, I'll give you a very quick sports analogy that might blow people's minds. One of the greatest NFL cornerbacks, defensive players, one-on-one players of all time is Deion Sanders, right? And what he used to say was, at his peak, he was so good as a cover player. He would just play one-on-one with like one of the best wide receivers, right? And just take them out of the game. But he said eventually I had to actively make it look like I wasn't looking and leave them slightly open or they'll never throw to him. So I had to actually like semi-make it look like I'm fucking up. Then when they throw him, I go and get the ball. Like, that's like some next level shit. You're not even thinking about that. You're thinking just Whippos just going, ha ha, there are no junglers, it's 1v1. And he's just hinting like, no, sometimes he's also distracting people. So I don't know. Princess Reckless isn't getting ganked all day long. There's something called a hierarchy, guys.
But yeah, you were right, Monty. It sounds almost like you're a LOL expert over there for a second.
Used to be. He used to play one on TV.
But yeah.
Coaching for the cameras only. I don't ever think about the game.
Yeah, but as for your point, Thorin, it's actually a pretty good analogy because even in Rogue, sometimes sometimes you just feel like you're gonna get ganked, and then I can ask Inspired, hey, do you want to take this 2v2? Even though it's like bad for the map, but you kind of have an inherent advantage over a play if you know it's coming, because you can kind of like set up your counterplay for it. And most of the time, the response to that, I'm like, whatever, I'll just waste their time. So Inspire can like get leads on other side, because if you waste enemy jungler's time on a non-impactful lane for the map, at least, then that's a big benefit for your whole team.
Sure. I actually have a question for you, by the way. obviously, since your team didn't go to MSI, there was no story about what would Rogue have done, blah, blah, blah. Dude, I actually think that it would, like, if I could have picked a team, I would actually have preferred of all the teams in Europe that Rogue went. And one of the reasons why is I actually think Inspired was underrated last split because they gave MVP to Reckless, right? Listen, he had a very good season as well. It's a new team, great storylines. He's been, but I thought Inspired should have been the MVP last season. Like, dude, some of the stuff he was doing was like, no European jungler was doing this stuff. Like, he actually seemed to actually have like almost like Korean understanding of what to do on the map at times.
I mean, the MVP thing was kind of rigged because there's like big hype around me joining Rogue and I'm weak side, very good, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, most of the votes for MVP were either split between me and Inspired. So when you have to pick someone from Rogue, they were kind of like split in two. And then the third guy won with Reckless because there's like from G2, the obvious choice was him, you know? So like there was everything got pulled into him, while for us, it kind of got like split in between us. But yeah, I mean, our bane has always been, or like in the finals, has been the fact that we're kind of throwing games in the mid game. But we had really big early leads every game because of Inspired, because I felt like he was always on top of the game, and there was always like I felt like he always knew what he needs to do to take over the game and how to fuck the enemy jungler or like their whole team, pretty much. And I felt like I don't know if he would have done better than Mad at MSI, but the fact that our early games have always been consistently better than most of the time everyone else would have been a big discussion factor, I guess, when you think about how we would have done against the MSI teams, because maybe we would snowball better against them because they have different play styles and stuff. But yeah, it's a bit sad that it didn't happen, but Inspired will get other chances at Worlds to shit on Korean and Chinese junglers, I guess.
There we go.
So it's interesting because when we were talking to Lustboy, 100 Thieves did something very interesting, which I thought was very good this last week, which is that they played like a Ziggs Senna, like a fasting Senna with Huhi on Ziggs, and that was kind of a unique pick, except for some kind of challenger or like amateur level games. And you guys did something very interesting this last week, which is to play Fiddlesticks, which is exactly the same. You guys are the only like tier 1 team that has been playing Fiddlesticks all over the world, basically. So what started this? Because you did go 1-1 this week. I don't think it was. How can I put this? The Fiddlesticks saved your ass from a weak mid game, like you just said in your first game of the week, and then you guys had a very fun game to watch against G2. Like, I enjoyed both of your games a lot this week. You probably didn't, because they were kind of heart attacks for you, I imagine.
Yeah, they're kind of shit.
But what was the reasoning behind picking Fiddlesticks when really no one else is running with this pick right now? And you guys built compositions around Fiddlesticks, whether it was you playing Nocturne and having kind of like the Fiddlesticks Crowstorm engage, which is very confusing to play against, or you were playing Kennen and you guys were like this AoE Wombo combo composition.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Kennen thing worked so well, because usually when you have stuff like Fiddlesticks, you kind of want him to be the sole AP, so they cannot really itemize against him. So his impact is massive because he's such a strong team fighter. And I think it mostly kind of started as a niche pick or like a comfort pick for him, because he's always so confident with his jungle matchups. Because I feel like in the past, even with Jankos, there was always this discussion, you know, you want to have a good jungle matchup and you want to pick this and ban this and blah, blah, blah. But this guy doesn't really care. And it's kind of surprising to me that I feel like he's willing to play anything into anything, even if it's like good or bad, just because he knows how to dodge the matchup or like change path and kind of be really versatile and kind of just dodge the matchup if it's really bad. And also for us, we really like playing these execution comps where we like to pull the trigger whenever it's like a big power spike for us, and he's really comfortable at doing that. So I mean, I kind of went all over the place, but back to my previous points, he likes to let jungle drop a lot. And usually when you let jungle get dropped, you kind of get pinched even like 8 or 10 bans in total, depending on how scrims are, because things get pretty wild there. And then at one point he's like, yeah, I'll just play Fiddlesticks here. And then it's kind of started working, and that coupled with the fact that he doesn't really care about matchups, because right now it's also the meta is not really so volatile early that you're just like, okay, who gets prio? Bot? Okay, well, I will start top, I go bot, and I get crap from there, and then you pretty much dodge the jungle matchup for the first 3 minutes and a half of the game. And also on top of that, it's kind of full clear meta where every jungler that can clear the jungle by like 3:15 and be there when crap spawns is good, you know. So Fiddlesticks is good because this champ just does 2 camps at the same time for
Right.
most of the game.
With no leash too.
Yeah, and also no leash is a really big thing for the stability of the lanes. And yeah, pretty much just all of these in combined just made him kind of a really strong pick. I also feel like maybe teams are not so punishing with level 1s as they used to be, because I feel like in Spring Split, level 1s were a bit spicy in EU. I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but right now I feel like maybe if teams want to invade and stuff, you can disrupt Fiddlesticks and stuff like this. But I'm not so sure. I mean, there's probably counterplay where you can just split map and stuff and get into more like deeper things. But yeah, it just kind of started as a comfort thing for him. And that coupled with the fact that we like these execution comps where we spike really hard in mid game and fights around like neutral objectives are really good for us. That's kind of how it started.
I mean, it seems like it's a pretty big advantage for you as a team with Rogue, because one thing that you've been succeeding with has been creating early advantages and really strong macro play this year. So you're constantly at objectives. So that's why I was really enjoying seeing the game you played on Nocturne versus Misfits, because that is incredibly difficult for the team to play against, because once you pop Nocturne ult, it becomes very hard to figure out where like the timing and location of Fiddlesticks and where he's going to come from. You guys still almost lost that game, but I think that was because of your execution, not because the comp was bad, because your first few team fights were amazing and also basically won the last team fight even when they had Infernal Soul and crushed them. So I think it shows the power of the strategy that you guys had, even if the execution wasn't always flawless.
Yeah, I mean, these comps, I feel like the pattern with them is that we enjoy having these like comps that are maybe not so super strong late game, because in the Misfits game we kind of get outscaled in the sense that they start outranging us and then they start winning sides 1v1. But all these comps, we kind of have the option to just take Soul at like 20 minutes or 25 minutes and just kind of rush Drakes. And we dropped the ball against Misfits when I think we got caught one time on top, and it just screwed up the whole tempo and the whole setup for the Drake. And then when you lose the option to take Soul at 25 minutes and it gets pushed another like 10 minutes, that's when your comp kind of starts falling behind, because you don't have this pressure to just get fights, because if they get a Drake and they get to ignore you for another 10 minutes and start outscaling you, that's kind of when everything goes bad. But that's also kind of like a nice thing, because now when you have these early game comps, if you execute them properly, they really take over the game.
You say it outscaled, but it was one great fiddle ult that also won you the game. I mean, the damage of that champion, if you get the good engagement late game, is still absolutely insane.
Yeah, but the thing is, at that point, since our comp wants to fight mostly around like objective setups and stuff like this, the fact is that these comps kind of require for you to be there first to kind of set up the area where you want to fight.
Sure.
But if you start getting like outranged, then you start losing priors on side, and that's kind of like they get the setup first, and you kind of lose all your advantage, because we have this like such a big snowball coming from early game, where it kind of guarantees that, or it should guarantee that we're always there to make the setup for the fight, so it makes it impossible for them to like face check and regain control of the area. But when you like drop the ball like that and you're not able to get the control first, I think that's kind of where our comp, even against G2, went bad. Because against G2 as well, I heard some people saying, yeah, we gave up Infernal Soul for free. But in reality, there is absolutely no way we can walk into there anymore, because
I think that ignores literally everything that happened in the early game that set that one up, which is
sounds like what Reddit does.
Yeah, I mean, it's like our comp is just kind of like you have like a huge rocket launcher that has only one ammo, you know, and you have to shoot it and reload for 5 minutes. And the thing is, when you want to get like control, you can't really control with just like one rocket launcher. You need like different guns to just walk in and take control. And that's what G2 have. When you walk over Oriana Ball, if you can't start the fight instantly, you're just gonna lose because they don't allow you to get the setup anymore, you know. And yeah, that's kind of what happened against Misfits in G2 as well. We just kind of stopped the snowball and stopped being able to be first on objectives because we're either like bad on tempo or behind in gold and pressure. And that's when we kind of started falling behind a bit.
Well, I think the G2 game was just a weird game that required
Yeah.
significant adaptation because honestly, like, I think people will say that, like, you might feel that was a bad game, and it kind of did end up being bad by the end. But honestly, the first like 10 minutes of that game are fascinating from a macro perspective because I feel like a lot of really good counterplay was happening overall to the lane situation. You know, the fact that G2 responded extremely well to the deaths that happened, you know, with the double kill you guys got in bot lane to start things off. And then it became a whole team effort on both sides to like fix that problem in the bot lane. So it ended up as being quite interesting from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, both teams had really big win conditions about the bot lane situation. I felt like the first time Rumble killed Kalista was not that massive because the wave state was fine. Wave got bounced. And then it's just 300 gold that you gave up. I feel like the biggest macro mistake that we did was when we died on the slow push back. And that's kind of when people said, oh, Inspire got out jungled, he was invisible and stuff. But the thing is, when support dies like that and they're just 3v1 on your tower and they're threatening dive on every wave, like Inspire cannot just come there and just look at them and be like, hey guys, I'm helping. He has to. You kind of bot lane.
He was doing Herald. He was playing cross map at that point.
Yeah, the thing is, bot lane dug their own hole because they died on the bounce back. Otherwise, like Inspired was there to like cover them and help them succeed. You know, it's just kind of like different win conditions that are always changing based on like the mistakes that happen in the game. You know, because that's kind of like the big lose condition that we had that game. Like the biggest reason we lost, I think, was the fact that we died on the bounce back before like Fiddlesticks got activated because he's just constantly forced to save the map that is on fire instead of having something stable where he can set up something.
Listen, that was at least against a team stacked with all the best players in the. I want to ask you a question, mate. There was a game you played on week 1 against Fnatic, right? Let me just set the scene. You're supposed to be one of the best top laners in the league. You're playing against a guy who literally, I don't know this motherfucker from Adam. He's just some guy. Apparently he's good, and they sign him, right? Then Inspired's supposed to be the best jungler in the whole West. He's playing against a fucking top laner role swapped to jungle, and they're playing fucking Wukong and Karthus, which is some like. How the fuck did you guys lose this game? What is going on in this one, Otto? Give me something, bro.
I mean, that one was like, I don't know. I felt like that game was just gonna be free win because I just looked at it and I was like, okay, this Karthus has no flash, so in mid game you're just gonna catch him quite easily. I mean, me and Inspired miscommunicated one time because I was like, just before I died, like 30 seconds before I died, I said, okay, this guy can't lane top because he had no potions and I had like a really good item. And I was like, can you invade Krax here? I asked him if he can invade Krax and he said, no, they're not up. And when he said, no, they're not up, I thought, okay, they're not up. So Karthus is not here probably because if they're not up, then that means he's like somewhere else. But in reality, what he meant is that they're going to spawn in like 15 seconds. Right. And then I just walk up and then Karthus is there and I'm like, because I walked up because I was like, okay, if this guy's not here, and I looked at Wukong's items, I'm like, okay, he's really not threatening because he had fucking ninja tabai and they're like really weak and no damage, and I felt like, okay, I can play like a moron here, and I can play like a moron here, and yeah, my bad. I can play like a moron here and take like a bit more risk. And I mean, it wasn't a bad death, but all in all, it kind of gave away the big lead that I was able to create from top, because I felt like if I thought about that lane in perspective for like the next 5 minutes was supposed to be kind of free win, because I was gonna exert a lot of pressure and we'd be able to get Herald. And yeah, I mean, I think we salvaged the game pretty well after early game because we gave them some gold that they shouldn't have gotten, and then our responses were pretty good to their play. And then at one point, at like 20 minutes, we just got caught side, and instead of just like abandoning him. It was kind of some miscommunication again on what we were supposed to do, because we should have just sacrificed them and just push mid and just get control of other side of the map. And they are not able to do Nash, and then everyone was like, hey guys, let's save him. And then we all went there one by one, and then we just died, and then Nash is up, and they just one-shot the Nash, and then the game is just over like that. And yeah, I mean, all in all, we weren't really like super upset about it. I mean, it sucks that you lose to Fnatic that when you feel like you should just win super hard. But at this point, you're so used to regular season being somewhat useless, sadly. All you need to do is just go to playoffs and make like top 3, top 4, and just beat everyone in playoffs, and then that's just how it is. So it's just kind of growing pains, you know, because we felt like these mistakes that we did weren't really like major, you know. It's just kind of like stuff that it's just like another day at the job where you just need to learn from all your losses and then just get better, because we felt like it wasn't really like something major that happened that is gonna hinder our growth and we're gonna be like bad and it's like a big alarm bells ringing, you know. It just felt like we fucked up just because we're a bit too impatient, I guess.
This is how perspective works, Monty. If you interviewed this guy a year ago, he had like the fucking hoodie on. He was like, I've got to get back. You know, I could have been someone. I could have been a contender, man, if it wasn't for you, fucking guy, doing that rumors about me and G2. I'm still fighting. I'm fighting. It's not how hard you get knocked down. It's how you get back up, man. And then he's like, now he's in Rogue, right? He's turned into a fuck boy. He's got all like like, I like my frosted tips, bro. How you like this shit? And then he's just like, all you got to do, bro, is just like make top 3, just win all the games to the playoffs. Fuck around. What do you know? You're world's next thing you know, top 4, easy money. Like, what the fuck? The change in 1 year is mad. It's mental. This is what that Rogue money does to you, mate.
It's actually crazy, but I mean, I don't know. There's always this thing where you feel like you always feel like when you're in a good team that there's just like random stuff that happens that that kind of holds you back. But at the same time, you're kind of walking a fine line here where you can't really get laid back and be like, yeah, it's fine, we're just gonna fix it for next week, you know. But I don't know, I feel like being able to take losses like this without like being too heavy about it is good, because I felt like last playoffs when we lost to Mad, everything was a bit on fire because it was kind of like a shocking loss, you know, and we all took it pretty bad and pretty heavy. But we managed to kind of like get back on track, you know. But it took a bit of time, and I mean, it was for the better that we lost. Because it kind of showed us new things that we did not.
But your styles changed a lot. I mean, if you look at the kind of, obviously the meta's changed, so that's going to play into it. But even when I look at the games from this last week and I see like you on Nocturne inspired on Fiddlesticks, and then we've seen a couple weeks of Larson playing like Lucian and Jace right now and looking a lot better on it. It seems like between seasons, between splits, you put a lot of time in on figuring out how to diversify your playstyle, because you can always fall back to what you guys were doing earlier, but it just seems to me that you're much more early game focused these days than you used to be. I think in the up until the G2 game in the first 2 weeks, you had 100% first tower rate. So your macro is still remaining strong, but it seems like you're putting more pressure on early. It's not that Hansama never played Draven because he's known for it, but when you're playing Draven and Callista, these are kind of win lane, more early game aggressive champions. And I'm liking the new look, even if you guys aren't 100% comfortable with it yet.
Well, it's not that we're not like comfortable with it. I just feel like it's always like work in progress, because after we lost to Mad Lions, even in like quarters and even after finals, it just kind of put things into perspective. Because when you look back over the whole spring split, you kind of realize what was the problem, what held us back from like winning LEC. And now it's a lot easier for us when we went to summer to kind of realize what we need to work on, because in spring everything was new, you know. We're just kind of figuring out what the fuck we're doing pretty much, because there's like 2 new players trying to get everyone on the same page and all of this stuff, and pretty much every issue that you had over the course of spring, at the end of spring split, it doesn't really matter anymore, because when you go into summer, you're just like, okay, these were our problems last split, and now we know how everyone kind of like reacts to all of this, you know. And yeah, I mean, we're enjoying a lot more playing early game. We don't feel like we don't feel bad when we lose these games, when we feel like, oh, we just got outskilled and stuff like this. Because this used to be a meme, I think, at some point in like season 8 or whatever, where everyone's like, oh, you can't snowball early, so just try to outskill them and pick like a Zir and stuff like this, It feels now that the burden of execution is on us always, and if we execute properly, then we're always going to win. So that's kind of why we're playing stuff like this, because we're really confident that we can execute, because most of the time when things go bad is mostly because we're just trying to over execute and overplay and just be more creative and more aggressive than we need to be.
So for you guys, now that it looks as though a lot of the old dominance of G2 and Fnatic has fallen away. Obviously, the finals that you were in last time was the first one in a very long time that neither Fnatic or G2 were playing in or won. Have you noticed like a churn that is different than your entire career? Because it feels like you not being on Fnatic and G2 prevented you from even having an opportunity at winning. Has this boosted your spirit somewhat? I know the loss was hard, but it seems like Europe is more open than it ever has been in the past. Is this a refreshing change?
I mean, definitely, even though I could argue that in the past, I think every single time, well, not every single time, but there's been a lot of times when like Fnatic or G2 made finals. They made finals when people didn't really like expect them to win finals. Like if you think, what's the first time G2 ever won LEC? It was like with Emperor, Kikis, and a roster that wouldn't really inspire like superstars like it does today, with like Reckless, Wonder, Caps, and everyone else, I just felt like kind of, it's weird, but every single time they made it, it's not, I feel like they made it work, not because on paper they were always like good, they just kind of, everything fell into place that made it happen. Because I think over the course of time, there were a lot of times where other teams could have made finals and beat them, but it just didn't really happen. But when you put it on the big screen and you just look at that panel of who won LEC, and you always see Fnatic and G2, that paints a very different picture than how it actually is. No one remembers all the times that they almost lost a 3-2.
Yes.
Everyone's like, imagine you all would have randomly won a 3-2 in that final against G2 all this year back. Everyone would have been
Fnatic.
like,
Yeah, Fnatic.
It was Fnatic? Oh, my bad.
Yeah. But you're right. It would obviously changed history. Like people wouldn't think the same way. No, the funny thing about that as well is like there's two angles to that. One, you're right. If you ever go and look, it's my favorite picture of all of esports. Everyone's going to think, what do you mean? Why would it be? Because there's that wall, Monty, and it goes like this. It goes like this. It goes Fnatic. Then it goes skip ahead. It goes G2, Fnatic. And then there's one team that's not Fnatic and G2. I tell you what, their mid laner must have been fucking amazing. So look it up, fans. Right. Then the other thing is this. Spoiler there. You can look it up on Wikipedia. Then the other thing is this. I actually think that's a real factor because I even see it happen now in LCS with TSM. When TSM isn't even close to the best team, they're not supposed to win LCS now, but there's like an aura effect of just being in TSM and playing against TSM. Like if you're in TSM, even if you're not in the good lineup, you're supposed to make the final and win. That's what every idiot fan thinks. And if you're playing against TSM, somehow they always win. So I think both factors happen. If you've been in playoffs loads of times and you always lose in the quarters, the semis, there might be a thought in the back of your mind like, when's it going to go wrong? If you're in the playoffs and you're like Perks, where he has that absurd record of like 25-3 in game 4s, he's just thinking, fuck, it's going really badly in this game 4. How am I going to win this one? That's like the difference in mentality. That's a real thing. That's psychological, but that is real for sure. That's why players use that term. They just don't explain it well, of like momentum. What they mean by that is if you'd had a certain key win early in your career, it might have just changed your whole worldview of what was possible. But if you have a really brutal loss at some point early in your career, you can see that wound just stays with some people for years.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I think, still this aura effect around G2 that they're always going to make finals because they've just always made it. But for me, every single time I play G2 or Fnatic, it's not like, oh, I never won. It was like, oh, this time this went wrong, that time that went wrong, this time, oh, we were really close, but this happened, and then this time, oh, that happened. It's always like so many of these moments where it's like, oh, it was so close and all of this. And it never really feels like, it's not going to happen or it's like unwinnable or whatever. But I feel like it's more like of an org thing where G2 is just a successful org, and like I feel like the people or like the players there, at least right now, are all really talented. You just always expect them to make finals. You know, it's not like they're gonna beat you and stuff, but you always expect them to be successful. Where you gauge successful however you want, I guess.
Right. Your career is like my girlfriend. You always believe it's possible. And I go in, I say, listen, I'll give it our best chance. And she's always like, I'm close. I'm so close. I'm close. I'm almost there. And it's like, fucking hell, love. Like, listen, it's hard to just get to this point in time. Can't you be happy with that? You know, did what I could.
Jesus.
That's exactly how I viewed it as well, to be honest.
Amazing. Amazing. I think it's funny too to talk about the psychology of it, because I feel like it rubs off on players even when they join a team. So first off, the perception has everything to do with reality when it comes to recruiting players to these teams. But also it seems like it can really have an effect on a player when they join a roster. So if a player joins a team that has been successful in the past, but maybe the player who joins has come close but hasn't actually gotten that title, by being on this team, they all of a sudden reinvent themselves in their mind by saying that, oh, I am the kind of player who can overcome this because I was selected to be onto this team. Therefore, I am now like the G2 championship level player. And that resets your mentality in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's my turn to win.
Was that something that you felt like you experienced, like moving to Rogue? Did it help you redefine yourself in your own mind as a player? Because you know, it's very exciting to have you make that kind of transition, especially you're a clear upgrade, like coming into this year. In a way, you've proven yourself to kind of go back onto one of the top rosters saying, yes, I am a player who is wanted by a team that was so close to winning last year, that is on the up and up, that has all these young up and coming players. And they want me, kind of the rock, the veteran, to join this roster. Did that help in your own kind of play style, or did you feel it helped you mentally at all?
Yes and no. I mean, for my playstyle, it definitely helps because just the level of talent is on another level than what I played with in recent years. It takes a lot of like the burden off my shoulders, because I felt like when I was playing like my other teams and we were struggling a lot, I always felt like I could do more, you know, and I felt like there was like this big burden of execution that I need to kind of dig us out from the hole. And I always had this pressure on me to just do more than what is needed. And I feel like now it's refreshing in the sense that I don't need to worry about all those things so much. Obviously, I still do, because I want to find new ways to make everyone better. But it's a lot easier for me to just play, you know, to just play top lane and not have to focus on random things. And yeah, it definitely helps. And also psychologically, it's like a breath of fresh air, you know, where when you're like in these bad teams, well, not bad, but these teams that are kind of like struggling to make playoffs and they're kind of like bottom middle of.
Yeah, by definition, the bad ones. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, your words, not mine, but
bad compared to the other teams in your league.
Yeah, you're out with the hood now. Don't worry about it. You've moved on. You've got the Bel Air apartment. Like, don't worry about it. You're never going back there. It's all right.
Yeah, exactly. So you could say this is how it is, Odoamne. You could live in Los Angeles, and no matter where you live, you're still in the top 1% of like wealth in the world, right? But compared to if you're gonna live in South Central Los Angeles, that's different than living in Bel Air, right? It is comparatively bad.
Yeah, but when you're in teams that are struggling like that, there's also like at least I had this pressure, I think, last year, where for me, Schalke last year when I joined them, or like when I re-signed for them for another year, it was my only option. It was either that or just be jobless, you know? So I felt like I was in a roster that is struggling, and it's maybe like the end of my career, you know, because if I'm doing bad when they were kind of the only team that gives me a chance, then it might be like my last year, you know? So when you're on teams like that, it's a big pressure. But on the other hand, now in Rogue, I'm like, well, this team is championship level team, wants to contend to win. If I don't do a good enough job, then the team is like, well, we're a championship level team. Something went wrong. If you want to make an upgrade, I don't want to be the guy that gets kicked, you know? Because I like being on a championship level team. I like winning. And
just don't go to LCS then. Just don't go to LCS. Listen, I warned you. Now you know. Stay in LEC, everyone. Stay safe.
Hey, in an alternate timeline, he was on Renegades in 2015. So.
Not CLG.
Yeah,
CLG.
Yeah, of course.
CLG.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, it's
CLG.
CLG.
Excuse me.
That
was when we were trying you out and
that was the what if.
Seraph.
Yeah.
Exactly. I messed up my own life right there.
Here's the thing. Just blame Dexter. Apparently he was duo with you, and I didn't hear him just fighting for you all the time. Well, you could be on the team. Thanks, Dexter. You fucking douche. You know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saved me, Monty, or not. So I guess thanks anyway.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing about that is, I think if we had you instead of Seraph, we actually potentially win.
Yeah,
maybe. But at the same time, I'm not sure because sometimes when I'm bored, I'm like taking a trip down memory lane and I'm looking at my games from 2015 or 2016 or back all the way in my first years of being a pro, and I'm like, holy shit, I was so bad back then.
Everybody was bad.
Yeah, but I guess that's the thing. Everyone was just bad, and you're just comparing yourself to the relative level of everyone else. Because everyone got better.
Seriously, if you go back and look at some of Faker's games from 2013 when he was absolutely dominating people on LeBlanc, you'll be looking at LeBlanc now and say, why was this so good at the time? Right?
Yeah,
because it seems really basic, and these are kind of mechanical skills that I would say even Diamond players, LeBlanc players have these days, even on NA. But the point is that the game was not researched to that level, right? In 2014, vertical jungling was mind-blowing, right? Now it's just common and silver. So,
it's also where this is an area though where fans and casual players don't get it, because what they don't get is there's two factors at play. One is this is literally how people learn. Like the great British writer Colin Wilson used to call this the robot. Basically, your unconscious learns like a robot, and then eventually you don't have to think about it. It just executes it for you like a macro. It just learns how to do it as efficiently as possible by practicing loads and loads and loads. And then the second part is nobody knew that was possible back then. So just have the vision to go for some of those players and 1v1 kills Faker was got that already was the mind-blowing thing. But the point is everyone's watched Faker himself do those things. So then they were like, that's possible. I'll practice it. And that's why eventually, it gets, as you say, the sort of trickle down is eventually, a Masters player can do all this stuff. And it looks super sick. But the point is they took years to learn all that stuff. He did it in a week. You know what I mean? That's the difference that people don't seem to realize. Because you could say, if you put me back in a time machine like that, it's but here's the difference. If I brought Faker forwards in a time machine, in a week he'd be beating your ass. Think about that one. They never do. They never do that way around, do they? Have you ever noticed that? Think how fast he'd level up. Exactly. Dude, it'd be like that shit X-Men movie where he goes to that TV he's like, what are you doing? Learning. And he's just absorbing all the data on the TV or whatever,
It's a Matrix. I know Kung Fu.
Back in the day, just going and fucking looking on screen solo queue, they're playing Trundle here. Nobody knows that in LCS. Guys, play Trundle. This guy's genius. Hire him again.
Yeah, the thing about those times is that when I joined LEC or when I decided to become a pro and I took a dip in the pro scene and scrims and stuff, I felt like the level back then was just so low because there was just no access to information. There was no information out there. I felt
there's still not access to information. You guys you can't even watch replays of Chinese teams. It's fucked up. But anyway,
true, that's crazy.
I've got a pro view in LEC at the moment, which fucking sucks, right? Do you have it yet? I don't think you do, right?
No. The thing is, you need to be live on stage there
that's
for
right,
them
yes.
to record it.
Yes.
That's why LCS has it.
I want to see them. Yeah, dude, that's you know how sad that is? Because I'll give you an example. The Adam guy for Fnatic that loads of people were skeptical about coming in, not least because he, Whipple was a pretty good player. Dude, if we could all see his pro view, maybe he's super good. Maybe we would see that's way better than I thought. But that's the problem. Fans don't know. You just don't get the same experience just watching the stream VOD. It's not the same. You can just tell stream by how people click if they're actually insane or not.
So I do want to talk about this, but I want Odoamne to finish the thought first. Then I do really, really want to talk about the pro view and replay stuff.
So when I started, there was kind of no. Right now, there's if you go to YouTube and you're looking for a league tutorial, there's so many things about wave management, how to trade, blah blah blah. But when we started, there was literally absolutely nothing. You would just sit there and be like, "Why are we doing these things?" Or "What can I do?" And that's why the players that were successful back then are still successful now, because everyone was everyone who wanted to become better was creative. And that's why, for example, Zoro Zero, everyone's like, this guy's a legend, but the reason they say he's a legend, though not many people know it, but he's the guy, at least in EU, who invented the lane freeze. Because this guy, when the first time I played against him, or like not the first time, I think one of the times when I played against him and he had a good matchup, he just froze on me and I was just sitting there and I was like, why is my wave not moving? Why is it there? And it was like completely new, because back then when you're like good, you're just autopiloting mechanically, and as you said, like a robot, you're just doing things instinctively. And sometimes you don't like question yourself, why are these things happening? And then you have episodes like that which kind of like are kind of mind blowing for you and just changes your whole perspective on League. And after stuff like that, you're like, okay, you need to be creative to find new ways to win. And that's why, for example, now when you see new players come into the scene, they have access to all of this information. Like, for example, when you have someone like Adam or any rookie that's like 17 or 18-year-old, this guy already watched everything on YouTube, knows how to control the wave and stuff. But back then when we started, there was like nothing, you know, you were just a robot and you had to kind of become an AI and learn to think for yourself and create all these new concepts like vertical jungling, counter jungling, lane freeze, wave management, and pretty much stuff like this, war timers, jungle paths, all of this. And then back then it was hard, I feel like, to be a standout player just because there was just nothing to base it on.
Yeah, it's hard to know. Like, what I find so interesting about the meta evolution of any game, but especially esports, because it happens so quickly and because we have patches and everything, is that you really take for granted the information that you can learn quickly now that took literally years to develop in terms of strategy. And I think you can really track this evolution. Like you mentioned wave management. Wave management is incredibly advanced now.
Teams in LCS don't know how to do it, dude. For real. You can see. Yeah.
But also, you know, what's so interesting to me about kind of, you can track like where the cutting edge of the meta is, whether that's like deep warding or jungle support synergy, vertical jungling, like wave management. What's so interesting to me is like right now, it feels like at the top level of international competition, we've reached the point where all jungle camp timers is like the bleeding edge of the meta. It's like where your wave is positioned. It's like wave management in relation to jungle camp timers to invade, which is like, that's where it feels like the most cutting edge shit is happening right now in League of Legends, which I find very fascinating.
Yeah, and back then no one thought about that. You're just like, oh, what's my jungle? Which camp is spawning next? Oh, I guess I'm going there. And now
it's like coordinating.
So think about.
Like now you're coordinating with your jungler for when their camps are spawning based on their jungle route so that you don't lose minions and you can force their top laner to be there while you like walk into their buff or their Krugs or whatever, right? So it's really fascinating to see like that's where a lot of the Chinese teams are playing around. And it's been interesting talking to players who are at MSI who from other regions who are like, wow, we were really surprised by we just didn't play the game like this and it really fucked us up. And so now we're starting to learn how to do that.
Yeah, one of my favorites. Oh yeah, go on answer, mate.
Yeah, because with every single of these like situations, there's like a flow chart of like 20 or 30 decisions that you can take. If this doesn't happen, there's like so many variables that come into every single decision that by some point you kind of define all of this like flow chart and all the options. But that's the interesting thing. When you face a different region, they kind of have their own flow chart, you know, and you're like, okay, there's one new thing to add to this. And that's why I feel like when you go to like MSI or Worlds, there's always these new meta evolutions for like specific regions.
My favorite change that everyone takes for granted, literally, in fact, when I say this now, a bunch of people, maybe even pros, are going to remember, oh shit, it was totally different. That everyone took for granted, right? Should never be done. Every moron LCS caster told me on Reddit, like, this shouldn't be done. It would just ruin the game. Was when they used to only have 3 bans in League of Legends and they brought in 5, like Dota, and then everyone was saying all that stupid ass shit, like, oh, that'll happen every game is you'll just ban all 5 players, or you'll just ban 5 champions for 1 player and you won't be able to play the game. It's like, I've watched Dota for like 7 years. If you do that, then all the power picks are up, you moron, and you lose the game instantly. No, it would never work. Like 3's all League can have. Now we've changed. Dude, everyone forgets it. It doesn't fucking matter. It just made the game better. It just added a little bit more tactical depth. It meant that you don't just get one OP champion that breaks every game unless you only ban that and then your player's the guy who can play it. Like, it literally, there was no negatives to it. And people were so resistant to this idea for literally half a decade. It was crazy. Because now you look back, you think, wow, wasn't this just it from the beginning of the game?
I love it when you rage like that. It's
pretty good.
Honestly incredible.
Not bad, is it? Yeah.
No, but the thing is, back then when there were like only 3 bands, there were like what 90 champions, but now there's already like 120 something or almost 130 champions.
True.
So, I mean, I feel like at one point there should be even more bands. But you know, drafting was used to be.
It's like they do at the moment, dude. Like Gwen, there should probably be at 9 fucking bands because every new one that comes out's busted as fucking it.
But having 5 bands is honestly so much better, because I think drafting back in like season 4 or 5, before they introduced 5 bands, it was like you had 3 drafts because it was that obvious what's gonna happen, you know. But now there's just like so much depth. There's been so many situations when I have to have my like 10th or 11th top lane champion ready to play because there's just metas where everything gets targeted super hard. And yeah, I mean, for sure it added more depth to the game.
I want to talk about the pro view stuff now because I think it's really important, and it is frustrating for me because I come from an RTS background and Thorin comes from an FPS background where we've always had access to replays or demos or what have you, and it's still very difficult to get these things even, 12 years after the game of League of Legends has launched. Like, it exists now, but you know, when I was starting out in esports, the website that I would go to, the community website, was literally called wcreplays.com because it was a replay download site for professional matches that took place, so you could learn, right? And we still don't have this feature. And I don't have a problem with paywalling it, frankly, because I think that I want the professional teams and the leagues to make money, so that doesn't bother me at all. But the fact that there is this information asymmetry that occurs because of all these deals. So, for example, like you have to have a Chinese login on Bilibili or whatever to get access to the Chinese ones. For Korea, I was talking to Papa Smithy the other day, and I'm not sure if this is still true, but it used to be true that you had to have a T1 phone service in order to get the Korean equivalent of ProView, which obviously people outside of Korea can't have. And even then, I think you could only watch it on your phone, which is really fucking annoying. And impossible to make any kind of content out of. You guys don't even have ProView right now. Meanwhile, anyone in the West or like English speaking can sign up to LCS. So in a way, like coming into an international competition, it's giving you guys an advantage because you can look at all the NA games or Chinese games in the login, whereas they can't watch shit from you guys, right? Like they can't watch your ProView, Odoamne. So to me, it's just, this is, if you want to have a world where everyone is competitive at the international level, having all of this information asymmetry is really difficult for fans to understand the game, content to be made around the game, pro players to learn how to play at the top level. And it's incredibly frustrating. And I, for the life of me, like, just can't understand why Riot can't put together a pro player replay or a pro match replay database that I can watch. And you know what's even funnier? Well, not for you, but like only the teams at MSI got the replays from MSI. They didn't give them to all of the professional teams in the world. So like
that's crazy.
That's pretty bullshit.
you can't even watch the replays from MSI to like learn. And so I'm just curious how you deal with this as a pro player, because you either have to go to like op.gg and then download solo queue replays of like Korean players or whatever, Chinese players, as you can. But how do you prepare for opponents, and how much would it help to have access to all these features?
I mean, it definitely sucks for sure. I mean, if you think about it, even about the thing about OPGG, if the client is on a different patch, if you go more than a week before when there's a different patch, you can't even access that. So that's completely crazy, you know? I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
It's Chrono Shift or whatever's coming soon, babe. You know, whatever that fucking meme was. Go on, keep going.
But I don't know, there's many times where I just look at the League client. I mean, it's a bit off topic, but I look at the League client and then I look at the Dota 2 client and I am like, and I'm like, holy shit, if League had the Dota 2 client in it, it would literally be the best thing in the world, because you could practice tool with like other people. You could be practice tool while you're in queue. But right now it just feels like there's this shitty like Flash player that is trying to boot up something from 2010. You know, it feels like
that's what it's doing.
Pretty much, yeah.
When you finish a game in 2021 and it just locks your whole mega expensive PC up, you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
It's like malware or something. What the fuck?
Yeah, you're still stuck at the end of the screen where you're like
exactly.
trying to click skip waiting for stats and your computer freezes for like a minute.
And you have to make the decision. Do I let it literally do the Windows close program because it's not responding? Or do I wait because I know inevitably eventually it'll like unlock the memory and let me actually go to the screen? So do I really want these stats or not? That's the real choice. By the way, if moron fans don't understand, because you know morons in the modern day, Monty, just go like, well, of course he'd lie because he makes money, so that makes it okay. I literally profit if ProView exists. I should argue against replays ever existing, but I fucking want them because it would just make the whole scene of 10 times better, wouldn't it?
I mean, go ahead, sorry.
No, I just... If there's a, I don't understand the motivation behind this. Maybe there's a technical challenge. Obviously, that could be the case because we already know that they can't
really slowly and they don't know how to make games.
Well, they can't.
Limitation.
The replays like can't go from previous patches, but even being able to have it on that patch. But it just seems like Riot really enjoys this information asymmetry for some reason. Like they'll give LEC replays to the LEC casters, and then those LEC casters can go on their streams and watch those replays, but they won't give it to everybody else to make content out of. Right.
By the way, when you give that example, though, that I know I'm not a programmer, but I guarantee that isn't a real thing. I'll tell you why. Because people in Counter-Strike, we used to have the same problem. When they did a fundamental up change, 1.3 to 1.5 to 1.6 to a new version of 1.6, it used to break all the old demos. Now, in theory, you could just keep an old installation, but you had to have like 6 installations, right? So some wizard, because there's always a tech wizard out there, like the kind of fucking guys who make Chrono Break or whatever, but that Riot just shut down and kneecap, there's always some tech wizard who'll figure it out. And what they tend to do is they'll make a version where it's like there's a fundamental sort of like core of the game which runs it, and then there's sort of just enough of each version, and it'll identify which version the game was on, and it'll boot it up, and you can watch the demo through that. This existed in Counter-Strike in like 2004.
It existed in RTSs as well.
Yeah, the idea it couldn't exist in League of Legends. Like we're doing the thing.
Like let's be clear.
It's not indie startup. Like we can't keep giving these billion-dollar companies a break on this shit.
Let's be clear. League of Legends is an RTS. That is what it is by nature. So if a replay can exist in an RTS, it can exist in League of Legends because League of Legends is literally just a modded RTS. That is what Dota is. That's all it is.
I mean, I think that like there was a point in like 2015 or 16 where there was a thing called Skin Spotlights or whatever, and it was this client Baron Replays, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, and it had the functionality. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm correct. I think it could run from like almost any patch if it was like from that season or whatever.
Okay.
And I think
I recall that as well.
And then Riot came and said we don't want this anymore. And then the way we access replays now, I think, is we have like a tournament client or whatever with all the patches in the world, like different clients. Yeah, and just we have to drag and drop it over the one that fits the patch that was on. But yeah, I mean, back to the ProView because that was the original question. I mean, it definitely sucks because even for pros, we enjoyed it a lot. Just the fact that we could look at other teams and see maybe there's something that we didn't see or there's something really cool that they're doing that we could implement in our own playstyle would be really nice. But the fact that we never had access to like Chinese or Korean, there's always like this Chinese random stream that you find it is like a pro view of whoever, and that's kind of cool. But you still have to look for it for so long. I feel like it could be a lot easier just to have it on one platform and just look at everything. But definitely hurts.
What I don't understand is like, again, I don't have a problem with the paywalling. Just give me through lolesports.com a way to pay for it. Right? That's all I'm asking for. You know what I mean? Just like, why do I have to have a Chinese login to the site? I assume I have to have a Chinese bank account or something like that in order to pay for it. I believe that's true. And so I just want a way to pay for it. Again, I wholly support ProView. I wholly support monetizing these features. But I think that you have to have some level of way to actually allow people around the world to access everything. And the reverse is true as well. I think that the Chinese and Korean scenes should have a feature to look at the ProViews that are easily watch the ProViews that are happening in Europe and North America.
I mean, actually, I'm not sure if they have the same problems that we have in accessing them. Maybe they don't, but I'm not sure. But I mean, I can understand for China why it might be hard for us to have access to it because it's maybe under 10 cent when it's in China. But for Korea, as far as I know, it's still Riot Games, and I feel like it should be a lot easier to just have it through LoL Esports. Because why have a platform for global League of Legends if it's not really global? It defeats the purpose in a way. But yeah, I mean, I would wish if it could come like that, even through behind the paywall where we can just see everything, because it just makes the whole scene better. Because not only for pros, but there's like so many up and coming players, like even like amateurs or noobs or people who are in bronze and they want to like have access to information like this, and that's probably the best source of information they can get, better than like these YouTube tutorials in a way, because it's like real live games and you get to see it through a pro's perspective, and they don't get access to it, and that kind of sucks.
It also prevents people from being fans, because if I'm a huge Odoamne fan and I just want to watch your perspective every game, I can't do that, right? I can't even engage in my own fandom of a team or of a player. And you mentioned players, but what about aspiring coaches or analysts as well? There's no way for them to level up their knowledge in an efficient manner. Like, the deck is entirely stacked against them. Like I said, if I want to be a caster in LEC, I don't even have access to the same tools that the LEC casters have, because they get the replays and then they are allowed to stream or make content off of those replays. But if I'm a lower tier caster who wants to learn or show off my knowledge, I can't even make content.
Yeah.
Like I don't even have access to the tool.
Think of the example you even gave there. Imagine you are an Odoamne fan. The motherfucker plays weak side off his like career. So like you're even like, it's Odoamne. They've moved the camera away. Like, let's have a look at the
exactly.
He's moving in. I think he's fighting him. It's going red. Oh, bloody go back. Oh, there's a fight in the bottom lane. Shit. So you don't even get to see that. Satisfying stats like being my girlfriend from earlier.
It's also junglers, right? Because they're not going to follow junglers around doing PvE. But a lot of that PvE, in terms of the nuance of like leashing camps or the order in which you kill things, it's just lost.
This is not a joke. People like Emily Rand used to actually have to freeze the VOD and look at the fucking mini map and be like trying to do the type, like, is he doing this camp? And write down like on pencil on a pad of paper all the jungle pathing, like by hand.
I mean, we do the same. Like sometimes, for example, say I want to prepare for, I don't know, tomorrow I play a certain matchup that I'm confident I will play. And then I see, China or Korea played this exact same matchup in the top lane. And you know how I do research? I go look at the VOD, and then I look at the minimap, and then at the health bars and how the wave is. And I'm like, he probably traded like this. And he probably used this skill and that skill. And I'm literally playing the matchup in my head based off of the minimap and how the HP bar is moving, which is kind of crazy for 2021. It's completely insane that I have to do so much imagination just to see it when it's literally right there. And that's the thing. I feel like it's really hard for even people who want to make like content creators, like people who can make like cool animations or like even like leak cinematics, to get into stuff like this. It's literally, you have to go above and beyond and find like a loophole through everything to get in there. And it's a bit sad, because for the level that League is right now and how global and big it is, it's obviously the biggest esport in the world right now, or at least in terms of popularity. The fact that you cannot like fully exploit it to create cool stuff and have access to cool stuff, it's sad.
And let me make a comparison for you guys so you understand some of the tools that are available in traditional sports for this. Well, first off, in esports, in CS, you just have demos, so that problem is solved. Like, it's just solved already. But when it comes to traditional sports, even in traditional sports, you have better tools. So, like in the NFL, if you subscribe to their digital service, you get the like, basically the entire game from like a bird's eye picture of every single play, and you can like switch between all the perspectives and stuff like that. So you don't have to watch the broadcast where they were focusing on one player or other player. You can literally just watch all of the players every single play, so you can see what everyone's doing at any given point in time. In Formula One, you can watch an entire race from any driver's perspectives with their full comms. It's actually crazy what you can do. And if traditional sports have figured this out, when they have to add more cameras, more very complicated tech to do this, when we have a perfect information system that is a replay file, it just seems wild to me.
Yeah, it should be a lot easier because it's literally, you have everything in a file. Not like you don't need to build the infrastructure for it. I mean, obviously you need to set up some databases or whatever, but they're obviously not as hard as in traditional sports. And one thing that was cool about ProView when it was there is the fact that you could have like 4 or 5 different screens on at the same time. So you could go like watch top jungle, mid, and even enemy top at the same time, like in exactly the same frame. And that was really cool when it was set up. I mean, hopefully when you get back on stage, hopefully soon, we get all of that back. But still, the problem is still there with Korea and China just being inaccessible.
Absolutely. Well, I actually, unfortunately, have to go. I have to get on a plane, so
We didn't do the viewer questions.
I know, but I have to get on an airplane. So we'll have to. I'm sorry for our viewer questions. I am going to have to push that back to next week. We will have a show. I'm very sorry, but unfortunately, this is something that I actually cannot change in terms of our scheduling. But thanks a lot, Odoamne, for coming on the show and talking about ProView and Rogue with us. We'll be back next week. Again, apologies to the viewer questions. I am just running on a very tight timetable, and we will answer all of your questions next week when that doesn't occur. Also, thanks to Lustboy from 100 Thieves for coming on. We will see you same time. It will be 11 a.m. Pacific or 8 p.m. Central European time next week. We'll see you then.